I'm on the bank of the Mara River where over 2 million wildebeest are gathered for an epic journey.
Jean du Plessis is on the trail of the great wildebeest migration, from the dangerous crossing of the crocodile-infested Mara River to the plains where he hopes to witness the largest mass birth on the planet.
Just arrived on the short grass plains, and with us arrived this enormous herd. The predators in this area must be thinking this is Christmas arriving.
But unusual weather patterns threaten to disrupt this year's migration. In Africa, nothing is guaranteed, especially for these nomads of the Serengeti. It's one of the last great wildlife habitats on Earth. At over 30,000 square kilometers, this vast and diverse ecosystem stretches from the Masai Mara in Kenya to the active volcanic highlands of the Tanzanian Rift Valley. It is home to 70 species of mammals. It's a World Heritage Site, and it has been named as one of the greatest natural wonders on Earth. This is the Serengeti. The name Serengeti comes from the Maasai language. It means endless plains. At its center is the migration, where more than 2 million wildebeest and zebra move in a continuous year-long cycle, driven by two distinct rainy seasons. They follow the rains to find the best grazing. Where there are millions of animals, you are sure to find predators and scavengers in abundance. They all play an important part in this circle of life on the Serengeti Plains. For 20 years, wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has guided clients to see parts of the migration. Now he plans to follow the wildebeests from the north to the short grass plains. That's where the females will drop their young in the largest mass birth on the planet. But it all starts with an incredibly treacherous river crossing.
I'm on the bank of the Mara River where over 2 million wildebeest are gathered for an epic journey, traveling more than 500 kilometers into the southern Serengeti. That journey starts now in the Serengeti.
What drives the migration is rain. For the past 3 months, the rains have stayed in the north. But come October, there is a change, and the storms begin to move south, triggering an instinct in the wildebeest to move. Their first major obstacle is to cross the treacherous Mara River. And this morning, Jean is in the middle of the action.
I'm following a group of wildebeest. This group has now grown and it's constantly getting bigger. Off to my right are still streams of wildebeest coming out of the hills. Last night there was a huge amount of rain in this area, and that's those thunder showers that's now pulling down these wildebeest onto the riverbank.
This journey is their destiny, but it is fraught with dangers. About 250,000 wildebeest will die over the next year of natural causes like thirst, hunger, or exhaustion. And many more will die at the hands of predators, such as lions or crocodiles, that wait along the route. They approach the river crossing with caution. They sense the lurking dangers. But their instinct to move is stronger than their fear. Soon it becomes a mad rush. Now there are thousands jumping in. There are over 2 million wildebeest and zebra. It will take several weeks at many different crossing points before they have passed. The Mara's crocodiles hope to get in one last feed.
This was amazing. Just towards the end of the crossing, there was this enormous croc that got hold of a yearling and literally just took the entire head of this wildebeest in his mouth, and all of them submerged, and that's the last we ever saw of all of them.
The wildebeest migrate between two grassland areas, the Masai Mara in the north where they mate, and the short grass plains in the south where they give birth. They will be congregating on each grassland for approximately 3 months before the rains shift, and they begin to migrate out. The Tanzanian side of the Masai Mara is called the Lamai Wedge, and it's unique because it has unusually high numbers of predators in the area. In the open grasslands, Jean will have an easier time spotting them. To get there, Jean will have to brave the river too, but there's a problem. The bridge is flooded. Just a few days earlier, a vehicle tried to cross but got caught in the strong currents and plunged into the crocodile-infested waters, stranding 5 men. Despite the danger, Jean decides to go anyway. If he waits, the area could clear out of wildebeest, and he will miss his best chance to see the lions in action. Crossing the bridge is nerve-wracking. The trick is not to look down. If he does, he could begin to drift. Jean's experience serves him well. He makes it safely across to the Lamai Wedge.
When looking for lions, the easiest way to find them is to look for these clearings in between the herds of wildebeest. I mean, this time of the morning they would more than likely be moving, or they already be on the kill. But about an hour or two from now it would get too warm and they would be searching for shade. But for now we're focusing on the plains. I would get to a bit of an elevation and then scan with binoculars and see if we can pick them out.
Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis is in the northern section of the Serengeti following the wildebeest as they migrate around the massive Serengeti ecosystem. It's October, and the herds are in the midst of dealing with their first and biggest obstacle, crossing the Mara River, where slippery rocks, rough currents, and crocodiles are some of the deadly obstacles that will claim thousands of the animals. The wildebeest that make it across will continue south and to the next phase of the journey, the largest mass birthing grounds on the planet. And Jean wants to be there to witness the births. Before the migration moves, Jean wants to observe predator behavior. The best place to see this is in the area north of the Mara River, known as the Lamai Wedge. As the millions of wildebeest cross the Lamai, large predators come out in force.
When looking for lions, the easiest way to find them is to look for these clearings in between the herds of wildebeest. But for now we're focusing on the plains. I would get to a bit of an elevation and then scan. This time of the morning they would more than likely be moving, or they already be on the kill.
Jean is looking for one of the clear signs of a kill, birds of prey circling above the Serengeti.
We're coming up on some vultures that's sitting on a carcass of something, obviously more than likely a wildebeest. It looks quite fresh. Yeah, it's a wildebeest that's been killed, and it doesn't look like hyenas. It's more than likely lions that had their fill, and as the sun rose, the vultures would pick up these kills, and they came to completely clean it off and eat every small piece of meat.
With wildebeest kills scattered everywhere, Jean takes a closer look to see what he can learn about the predator behavior in the area.
What I'm seeing here is a clear indication of predators that's not very hungry. One can see that a very small part of the rib cage has actually been consumed. Nice signs of hyenas chewing this off, but also not hungry hyenas, because had they been hungry, they would have eaten this entire rib cage. Just as for a hyena, it takes no effort to consume thick bones such as this. Other things that point out to me are the skin that remains, the legs, and generally when there's huge competition for food in an area, hyenas would come in and grab a piece of leg and would run off. So the entire carcass would disperse over a very big area. So this points out to me that there potentially wasn't a lot of conflict around this carcass because animals are not hungry. There's food all over this system. I've got some hyenas in a kill here. It's a fresh kill. They all kind of feeding quite ferociously. There's about 5-6 of them, and a lot of them are still kind of pups. What's very interesting is there's a silverback jackal that's constantly darting in and trying to take a bite, but these hyenas are having none of that, and they tend to kind of chase him off. But a little bit away, it seems where the actual kill happened, there's some skin and pieces of meat lying around. There's a big group of vultures there, and the jackal is also focusing. There he's coming in now. Yeah, he's getting his head right between the legs of the hyenas. It's a extremely brave act for something so small, because it will just take one bite of a hyena to kill him. They tolerate him up to a certain point, and then there's this half-hearted attempt of chasing him away, and he would just kind of scatter away a couple of meters and then come back immediately again. And there was one incident where he grabbed a big piece of skin, and I think that was enough for the hyenas, and then they chased him around the bush a couple of times. Interesting, these hyenas will consume most of that carcass. They've got incredibly powerful jaws, huge carnassial teeth, where when lions would feed on the kill, they would not eat the bones as much as hyenas would do that, and most of the rib cage is already gone. There's so much food around. They are fat, very, very well fed, and they must eat once or twice a day, and it's easy for a hyena to go 3 or 4 days. This is definitely not out of hunger. It's purely out of greed.
Not all the predators are hunting wildebeest. Jean comes across another resident of the Lamai Wedge, a smaller species of the cat family.
There's a serval cat here. You can see it moving over there now. It's very, very well camouflaged, but you can just see its back moving through the tall grass. Yeah, I came around a corner and there's a open clearing in between all of these wildebeest that indicated for me that there's a predator around. Now, I don't think this single serval created this clearing, so possibly some lions around, but this serval is down in a drainage ditch. He's clearly out hunting, and in these grasslands they would be after things like mice and birds, and they've got an incredible leap, so they will have grass birds shoot up into the sky, and they pretty much follow them up and take them out of the air.
Jean pushes on. He's working his way up through the plains along the boundary of the resident pride's territory.
There's a lioness in a rocky outcrop in front of me. This is the perfect place for a pride of lions to be hanging out on these plains. It's first of all shady, but it's also a great natural observation point. And I'm just trying to, it's extremely rocky, so I'm just trying to get a bit closer and see what they are up to. They are They are quite relaxed. These must be very well fed lions. The flip side, of course, is when the migration moves out and the grasses are tall, it is extremely hard for lions to make a kill. She's lying down. This is an old female. I can see her ears are all tatty. Very dark black nose. I actually see two of them. No, it's also a female. She's a bit younger.
It's getting towards midday, and Jean is not seeing any predators on the hunt. In this heat, it's likely that the predators are doing their hunting early in the morning when it's still cool. So Jean decides to go back to camp and start again early tomorrow when he hopes the lions will be on the prowl. So he heads back across the still flooded bridge to camp for the night. The following morning, he starts out at sunrise. Within minutes, he gets lucky. A pride of lions has made a kill.
These guys are our resident pride. They're living fairly close to camp, and they must be the most fortunate lions in the Serengeti at the moment, having their entire migration moving through. Every wildebeest in the area kind of move past here on these shorter grass. So the only thing they need to do is just lie up in this drainage area, and it's literally littered with carcasses. And they are the carcasses for wildebeest right now. Right now, it's only the cubs feeding. There's quite a few cubs, two different ages, around 4 to 6 months. These cubs are now feeding into a bit of a game, and he's constantly trying to pull this carcass away from the rest of the group. It's also good practice for later on in life.
Living on the Serengeti is a mixed blessing for the lions. During the migration, the resident prides eat well, but once the wildebeest have left the area, the lions have to survive on leaner times. The never-ending cycle of the wildebeest migration on the Serengeti is a story of instinct and survival. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has been watching the most spectacular part of the journey, the mass crossing of the Mara River. As deadly as predators are, the river poses a greater danger to the wildebeest. Its fast-flowing currents can sweep a wildebeest downstream, or if the herds choose a bad crossing point, hundreds of the animals can die. Jean is with a herd in trouble.
This is like worst case scenario. This is a very bad place for them to cross. The far side is kind of piling up with bodies, and then these guys down below just cannot get out of the river because of all of these exits being just congested by dead animals. You know, as far as one look down the river, there's just bodies drifting all the way down, and that's going to get trapped down in a rapid a bit lower down. And there's still hundreds of thousands of wildebeest coming in behind me, waiting to cross here.
And for the young and adolescent wildebeest in the herd, crossing the Mara is especially dangerous.
For an adult wildebeest, it's one thing to cross a high, fast-flowing river like this, but it's a massive challenge for the younger ones. In February, March this year, a lot of new wildebeest were born, so they made the journey up into the Masai Mara, and they crossed a much lower river. So they went into the Mara, and now suddenly they're coming back facing these massive currents, and that's a huge challenge for an animal that's not even a year old yet. The majority of the carcasses that I can see here are actually yearlings of these young ones that just could not get through this deeper river. Also, by the time that a wildebeest calf reach about this stage, they've more than likely separated from their mothers. So they form these little groups or herds of calves. And a lot of times you'll have a yearling herd that will cross by themselves. And that can be catastrophic for an entire herd of that, like that, if they hit a river. that is flowing as fast and deep as this right now. And you can see there's like hundreds of vultures and storks that's kind of sitting on top of this island and is now eating these dead animals. These vultures are the cleanup crews of the Serengeti, and without them it would really just be a mess of rotting bodies. Big groups of vultures like this can consume thousands of kilograms of meat in one day, so they form a crucial part in the cleaning up of the Serengeti. It is very difficult for vultures to actually tear up the skin of these tough wildebeest, so they have to wait for the bodies to partly decompose. Luckily, we're sitting a little bit upwind from all of this because it must just smell incredibly bad as you go downwind from this.
The crossing was catastrophic for this group. But what is bad for one species is good for another. Although scavengers like vultures sometimes get a bad rap, the work they do is of vital importance to the Serengeti. If all these carcasses were left to rot, the entire ecosystem would be in danger of contamination from diseases that go along with the rot. Vultures feed on dead meat or carrion. They can strip a carcass in a few hours. Surprisingly, it's not lions that eat the most meat, but vultures. The birds eat 70% of the meat on the plains. There are 5 different kinds of vultures on the Serengeti. These are the Ruppel's griffon vultures, identified by white streaked feathers and yellow beaks. These vultures don't make their nests in trees, they lay their eggs on cliffs. The vultures congregate in an area 120 kilometers southeast of the Mara River. It's Maasai territory, and Jean is going to meet with a Maasai guide who will take him to the cliffs where these birds make their nests.
This gorge is called Ocarrion Gorge, and this is one of very few breeding sites for these Ruppel's griffon vultures. These cliffs behind me are white with their droppings, and they must have used this area to breed for thousands of years. And it's the ideal nesting site for them because it's not entirely flat cliffs. There's hundreds of these little ledges that makes the perfect nesting site, and a nest really isn't much more than a couple of rough sticks thrown into a heap, and that's where the female will lay her eggs. This couple will pair up for the breeding season and form a monogamous pair, and together they would raise the chicks. What's quite amazing about these vultures are that they need to make daily excursions into the Serengeti plains to feed, and at the moment when the migration is down here in the short grass plains, it might only be about 50 kilometers, but as the migration moves northwards later on in the year, it can be hundreds and hundreds of kilometers in a return journey for them to go feed and come back to their chicks. It's interesting how they handle these huge journeys. It's not like they fly there and flap their wings. They would shoot up immediately from here into a high thermal. All around this gorge is extremely hot, so very effective thermals, taking them thousands of feet up into the sky, and they basically just glide down into the area the migration would be that time of year.
These vultures are the highest flying birds in the world. They can reach altitudes of 11,000 meters above sea level. They are big birds. Adults have a wingspan of just over 2.5 meters.
This huge amount of vultures around, there's feathers lying all over this gorge, and I picked up 2 here. This one here is a secondary feather, and this is a primary. These primaries are going at the edges of the wings, and that's what creates a lift for the bird when they flap their wings. And it's these secondaries that will keep the bird in the sky when it's actually soaring up in these thermals. The reason why birds do preening is they fix their feathers, where they bring these together
and they stick them like Velcro. And this will create this solid platform for them to get up in the sky. This Rupal griffon vulture is one of the biggest birds in Africa. It's the second largest vulture, only rivaled by the Nubiums or the leopard-faced vulture. This is now where the gorge narrows, and when there's flash floods, this must be pretty deep. And quite incredible to think about that this gorge has been here for hundreds of thousands of years, and we are very close to the cradle of man, Olduvai Gorge. So some form of hominid must have been walking through here, getting water in the dry season, probably for the last 100,000 years. I'm quite a bit up into the gorge now, and this is one of the main reasons this gorge is so important for the Maasais. There's almost year-round water in the form of these pools and puddles that they can bring their livestock in to drink from. But they're also collecting this water to now take back to the village. This is pretty much the main purpose of a donkey, is that they can carry water out of such hard places down to the village. Apparently this water up here is more for human consumption, and the water down below would be for donkeys.
It's January in the Serengeti, where wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis is following the year-long wildebeest migration. It's now been 3 months since the herds finished the most dangerous part of the trip, the crossing of the Mara River. All throughout that 250-kilometer leg, the wildebeest have had to contend with predators. It is a war of attrition, but the first herds have made it through and begin to push out of the woodlands. The wildebeest are now heading to the southern shortgrass plains, where perhaps the most important event of the annual migration takes place. This is where the females give birth to more than 200,000 young over a 3-week period. It is the largest mass birth on the planet, and a spectacle that Jean does not want to miss.
It's incredible. We just arrived on the shortgrass plains, and with us are arriving this enormous herd of wildebeest. And they're all funneling through this gully right now, and on the other side of the plain must be tens of thousands of wildebeest. The roads are clearly very wet, meaning there must have been a big thunder shower here last night, and that's the driving force for the migration. There's very little instinct in these guys. It's all about following the rain, and this is where it's raining right now. So last night they must have seen the thunder, smelled the rain in the water, and this is why they are moving into this area. And this is generally what pulls the wildebeest from the north to the south, are these thunder showers that move from the north down into this area. The grasses here are fantastic. Right now I'm not seeing any young calves with them, which is great for us, because giving us some great opportunity to potentially witness a birth. But some of these females are looking very round and ready to pop. I'm certain in the next week we will see some births.
Now, just being on the shortgrass plains does not guarantee Jean will be able to stay with the herds. There are millions of wildebeests, but they can move fast. The entire wildebeest herd can completely vacate an area overnight. There are some parts of the park that are off limits to tourists, including Jean. If the wildebeest go into one of these areas, Jean would miss the entire calving season. Jean has decided to base himself at sanctuary camps in a spectacular area known as Kusini. From the camp, he'll have the perfect vantage point to keep his eye on the migration. Its central location should keep Jean in striking distance when they begin dropping their young. But even the best thought-out plans are subject to approval by Mother Nature. Today, things are not looking good for Jean. A massive storm is rolling in, fueled by a tropical storm off Tanzania's coast. An entire month's rain, nearly 20 centimeters, falls overnight on the short grass plains, turning the entire area into a swamp. The rains have triggered the herds to move again, but the heavy dump has created a major problem. Reports say the roads are impassable and that vehicles are stranded all over the plains. If he waits, he could lose track of the herds. So Jean decides to brave the conditions. He realizes quickly this is going to be a tough day. Jean is driving on black cotton soil, which behaves a lot like ice.
Cheapest to keep the car moving.
If he stops, he won't have the traction to get moving again.
There we go. Not good at all. However, we've got a hyena to our right. Nothing's going to help us much right now. Next thing is to try and dig out these pockets so we can make ourselves a little bit of a runway to get out. Ideally, it'd be nice to find some wood to now put in front of the tires, and we just need to get moving again and get that momentum.
Jean has to dig out each tire. He lines the ruts with grass, hoping it will give him enough traction to get back on the road.
And I think we'll just stick with the motto of momentum. I'll probably get stuck down the road track. Can't really call this a road, can we?
Wildlife expert Jean du Plessis is following the wildebeest herds as they travel through the Serengeti on their year-long migration. They are just days away from the most important event in their yearly migration, where the wildebeest females give birth to 200,000 young over a 2 to 3 week period. It is the largest mass birth on the planet. A massive rainstorm swept through the area, flooding the short grass plains. With the rain, the wildebeests have moved out. Jean is in an area called Moru Koppies, where he hopes to see the mass births. While he waits for the advancing herds to arrive, he has time to explore the area's unique geology.
This area is known as Moru Koppies, and the word koppie is really a Dutch word that refers to these rocky outcrops. That's such a prominent feature all around us. What it really is a fault line in the rift. Now, as the rift was splitting apart, you had all this magma pushing through, trying to get to the surface, but actually solidifying quite deep under the ground, cooling down quite slowly, making these incredible boulders. And now, many years later on, you have the surface eroding away and starting to expose the top of these intrusive igneous rocks. And it makes very nice refuge for things like lions.
Moru is home to an unusually high number of lion prides, and in no time he finds the resident pride, which is headed by 2 dominant males.
This pride of lions have 4 young cubs that's about 2 to 3 months old.
Right until now, it's been extremely quiet here in terms of prey, so it must have been hard going for this pride to even get these cubs to be 2 months old. Soon it's going to be like a massive party on their doorsteps all the time with these millions of wildebeest pushing into these plains.
In spite of the king of the beast reputation, territories are actually controlled by the females. They're the ones who create the social structure, raise the cubs, and do most of the hunting. Prides have as many as 5 or 6 females and their cubs.
This is possibly the best time for lions to have cubs here in the southern Serengeti. All around the southern plains are drying out, and here in Ngorongoro are the last areas with green grass. And about in a week's time, you'll have all these herds of wildebeest pushing into Ngorongoro, making it extremely easy for these lions to kill something and have a constant source of food.
While the territory is controlled by the females, the prides are controlled by the males. In the key areas, it takes more than one male to hold a pride. That is known as a coalition. This pride is controlled by a coalition of 2 strong males. Part of their job is to defend their pride from being taken over by nomadic male lions. As the wildebeest migration moves in, providing an abundant supply of food, nomadic males come in as well, following the food and ready for a fight. Males are forced out when they're about 2 years old. They are looking to establish or take over a pride of their own. And for a lion, there is no better place than Ngorongoro. The following morning, Jean is out early and immediately finds a serious threat to the resident pride.
I just came across 3 nomadic male lions. They seem to be about 3 years of age. They've got a scruffy, smallish mane, but they are huge in body. And they obviously made a kill last night, and this guy is carrying his dinner. It's a wildebeest. No, it's a young zebra. Yeah, it's a small zebra. And what's interesting is that when there's 3 and more males together in a collision, that they will always be related. So they are definitely brothers, and even when you look at them, they seem to be exactly the same age, same size manes.
Usually, a 3-year-old male is too young to challenge the dominance, but Jean thinks this trio is ready for a fight.
Already by walking around like this in the open is brave. A nomadic lion, theoretically, is always sneaking through the territory of a dominant male somewhere. And that dominant male is constantly looking out for guys like this to come and beat up. Generally, a lion will be dominant in a pride when it's about age 5 or 6 even. But 3 big brothers like this will more than likely be able to overthrow all the males in the pride when they are only 4, 4.5. These guys are so powerful that they might dominate a couple of prides of females, especially like an area like Ngorongoro, where you've got so much diversity in landscape. There's quite a few prides of females in a fairly small area, and they can quite easily become dominant over 2 or 3 prides of females, making them, of course, very powerful. It's rare in the Serengeti that the male lion gets much older than 10, at a push 12, and it's quite common that a lion in a zoo can reach age 20, 25. There's even a lion in Germany in a zoo that's age 40. But out here in the wild, where they need to really work for a life, that cuts a few years off their lives.
When a new male takes over the pride, he kills all the cubs to make room for his own. With these cubs already a few months old, the females are counting on the 2 males for the survival of the pride. If the 3 males challenge, it will be a long night in Ngorongoro. After a noisy night, Jean heads out before sunrise. He's greeted by an incredible sight.
Where did they come from so quickly? I'm out here on the short grass plains, and overnight, hundreds of thousands of wildebeest just appeared. Yesterday there was very little around, and today suddenly they're everywhere. I mean, as far as I can see, it just looks like pepper. There's hundreds of thousands even.
This is good news for Jean. For a while, it looked like the wildebeest herds were heading towards protected land that is off limits. It would mean that he would not be able to witness the mass births.
And our objective still is to find a female giving birth. Right now, there's no calves around, which is a very good sign for us, because once the calving starts, it's a very rapid process, and these females will all be dropping their calves to, I guess, flood the market. There would just be too many calves for predators to take advantage of.
Jean is not the only one out cruising the herds. He finds the dominant male lions, but by the looks of them, there was an epic battle during the night.
They are both beaten up quite badly. The one had a real messed up eye, and the other one had quite a bad limp.
They may look badly injured, and they've lost a lot of fur around their manes, but they seem to have won the fight against the nomadic males.
If a dominant male will get injured in a fight, he's extremely fortunate to be dominant inside a pride, because these females will continue to hunt and he can benefit from their efforts and the food that they catch. There's 5 lionesses walking through the herd. There's this kind of classic lion hunting behavior in the migration, as they are looking for anything that might be injured that's just easy pickings, and it's almost like, why expel any energy if you don't have to? We're in the calving season, and generally female wildebeest will give birth before 10 o'clock in the morning, and obviously when that baby is born, it's very, very vulnerable. So these lions are kind of fanned out. I'm certain they're either looking for a female giving birth or a young one that was just born. So these lions didn't make a kill, but they are not very well fed. So they will definitely have to hunt within the next 12 hours, probably later this afternoon when it cools down again. And I suspect now they're heading into one of these koppies where the wildebeest will also need to drink during the day. And they're probably going to lie up there and hope for a better chance later.
Wildlife expert Jean du Plessis has been following the great wildebeest migration since October, when the 2 million animals made their deadly and dangerous crossing of the Mara River, where thousands died. It's now February, and the survivors have made it to the short grass plains, where the females are about to give birth. It is a true phenomenon of the natural world, the largest mass birth on the planet.
We just got a call from one of our drivers saying that he's with 2 wildebeest that are giving birth. So we're just trying to race to get there, because once it starts, it's quite quick for it to happen. It's interesting that wildebeest will only give birth up until about 10 o'clock in the morning, because the baby will need the rest of the day to get strong to be running by nightfall and escaping predators.
Jean makes it to the area where his guide and clients have a front row seat.
We just passed a female with her leg sticking out of her, so there's a birth about to happen. Yeah, she found a flat patch and she's just kind of circling around. They tend to prefer an area, that doesn't have a huge amount of tall grass. She's chosen the safety of the herd to give birth for obvious reasons. This young calf coming out is extremely vulnerable. Hyenas, lions, and all kinds of predators are out on the prowl this time of the morning, and they are keeping a watchful eye out for something just like this. Yeah, it's gonna happen any moment now. There you go, she just stood back up. And yeah, that's like having gravity help her, but then there the baby drops. It's incredible, she's just coming around sniffing on the baby now. It's amazing how quickly this all happens. Yeah, it's about 5 to 10 minutes now, and the baby is starting to move around a bit more, and it's kind of trying to stand up, pushing it up on its hind legs, but very off balance still. You know, this young guy will be ready to go in the next 5 minutes. You know, 10 minutes later, ready to run with his mum, because now hyenas are really watching out for young calves falling over like that, and they would be here in a flash if they can see it. There you go, a new generation starting all over. In a few months' time, this baby would even be strong enough to start up the migration up north, and by July, August, even cross the Mara River. It's incredible to think that that little thing just born there, so helpless, in 6 months' time will be crossing huge rivers full of crocodiles that's like 12, 13 feet long. You know, and besides that, of course, they also have to travel 400 kilometers to get there through hyena and lion infested savanna.
For just over 3 months, Jean has been following the first leg of one of the greatest journeys in nature, the wildebeest migration. From the crossing of the Mara River to the mass birthing grounds, the millions of animals are in constant motion. Their movement is crucial to the Serengeti ecosystem. Everything in it thrives off their impact, from the grasses, insects, to the birds and predators. Everything is connected, defining the circle of life on the Serengeti. It's the greatest wildlife spectacle on Earth. Jean du Plessis follows the wildebeest migration through the Serengeti.
So there's a birth about to happen. She's right here in this group.
The wildebeests have given birth. Now they head back north to face the crossing of the treacherous Mara River.
There's a huge crocodile in the river. A croc of this size only needs one decent meal once a year.
Jean aims to time his arrival perfectly.
There's another very large group that's also pushing onto the river.
But when and where they'll cross is anyone's guess. There are no timetables for these nomads of the Serengeti. The Serengeti is one of the oldest intact ecosystems on Earth. It covers an area nearly the size of Belgium and spans 2 countries, Tanzania in the south and Kenya in the north. The ecosystem has evolved over millions of years. Every living thing here, from the tiniest insect to the largest creature, plays a very specific part in keeping it balanced. The most important driver of this system is the wildebeest migration. And the mechanism that triggers them to move is the weather. Sometime around October, thunderclouds build on the horizon and the rains begin to move south, signaling the start of one of the greatest mass movements of animals on the planet. It begins with the actions of a single animal. Then, driven by an ancient instinct, the rest of the herd follows. It's a dangerous journey where predators wait along the route and prey on the passing herds. And then there's the treacherous crossing of the Mara River, where wildebeest will die in the thousands. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has been tracking the herds. The wildebeest have completed the first trek of their year-long journey. They've arrived on the short grass plains, where the females have begun to give birth in what is the largest mass birth of mammals on the planet.
We just passed a female with her leg sticking out of her, so there's a birth about to happen. Yeah, she found a flat patch and she's just kind of circling around. She's chosen the safety of the herd to give birth for obvious reasons. You know, hyenas, lions, and all kinds of predators are out on the prowl this time of the morning. And they are keeping a watchful eye out for something just like this. Yeah, it's gonna happen any moment now. There you go, she just stood back up. And yeah, that's like having gravity help her, but then there the baby drops. It's incredible, she's just coming around sniffing on the baby now. It's amazing how quickly this all happens. Yeah, it's about 5 to 10 minutes now, and the baby is starting to move around a bit more, and you know, it's kind of trying to stand up, pushing it up on its hind legs, but very off balance still. You know, this young guy will be ready to go in the next 5 minutes. There you go, a new generation starting all over. In a few months' time, this baby would even be strong enough to start up the migration up north, and by July, August, even cross the Mara River. It's incredible to think that that little thing just born there, so helpless, in 6 months' time will be crossing huge rivers full of crocodiles that's like 12, 13 feet long. You know, and besides that, of course, they also have to travel 400 kilometers to get there through hyena and lion infested savanna.
Less than 10 minutes after it's born, the baby is on its feet. This is where the baby will imprint on its mother. They will get to know one another's scent and call. This is just the start of the wildebeest's mass births. 200,000 calves will be born over the coming weeks. It's an extremely smart adaptive strategy. On these open plains, the newborns are easy prey to the predators that follow the migration. So by flooding the market with so many newborns at once, tilts the odds in the wildebeest's favor. Some will be taken, but many more will survive. There are huge challenges ahead for the newborn wildebeests. In 2 months' time, the calves will be ready to join their mothers on the return trip up north. But this first 24 hours is crucial for its survival. But with so many newborns today, the first day is a trying time.
This is a little water hole outside of camp, and this is some of the only standing water in the area. And these animals found it, and yeah, great delight. Bit of disturbance. For many of these young wildebeest that was born this morning or last night, this would be the first time that they are drinking. And there's a little bit of pandemonium as the wildebeest start to run around. They lose their mothers, and there's a few of them just standing around. There's one here in the grass that clearly lost its mom, and a few of the adult females have been coming around just smelling it and showing a little bit of concern. I mean, this poor thing must have been born this morning early, and to already lose your mom. Yeah. Some interest. And there's a second baby that's also coming up now, even younger. That one is tiny. You can still see the umbilical cord hanging down. You can see there's a few mothers coming up smelling some of these lost babies, and they would immediately push them away once they realize that that's not their calf. With wildebeest, it's very much like bats or flamingos, where every calf have a particular frequency that the mother zones in on, and it's not uncommon for babies to get lost, but they generally find each other.
Luckily for this calf, its mother responds to its cries, and the two are reunited. The pair head off with the baby sticking closer by this time. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis is in the central Serengeti following the year-long wildebeest migration. It's February, the midway point on the migration route. Jean is on the short grass plains in the south, observing the mass births. The wildebeest females all give birth at the same time. Hundreds of thousands of calves are born in a 2 to 3 week period. For a species constantly on the move, this is an excellent survival strategy. The newborns are vulnerable to the predators that follow the migration. The only safety is in numbers. So the female wildebeests have timed their births to flood the market. Some will fall to predators, but with so many young, the odds are in the wildebeest's favor. For the newborns, life starts quickly. The calves are up and running within 10 minutes of being born. The first 24 hours is crucial for these newborns. This is when they bond with their mothers. But in a massive herd, the little ones often get lost. Jean has found a calf wandering along a main road, alone.
I just came across a baby wildebeest that's obviously lost. And what happens is they basically imprint on anything. So he saw this vehicle driving fairly close to him. He came running up to it. And at this stage of their lives, they're so dependent on a bigger creature taking care of them, hopefully being the mom, that even if I get out of the car, it will come right up to me and then kind of hope for some care. It's kind of quite sad.
The baby heads off over the plains in search of its mother. Luckily, it chooses the direction that takes it back to the protection of the herd. And that's a good thing. Just up the road, Jean finds a predator.
I just came upon a cheetah. She's down in a crouching position. It looks to me like she's hunting. She's looking at either like wildebeest. There's quite a few of them around, but there's also like 4 or 5 Thompson's gazelles here that she's more than likely after. And it also seems like these Thompson's gazelle are moving towards her, but also still not looking at her. There she goes. I think she couldn't make up her mind which one to go after, and it's so important for cheetahs to focus on one gazelle and just stick behind that. And it seemed like she was going between the 2 different groups, and she didn't get lucky on this one.
The cheetah has missed its prey. It's too hot now for another attempt, so it retreats and will look for any shade it can find.
She's now walking back to her cubs, which seems to be the only shade in the area. It's actually a safari vehicle that's parked behind us. It was also witnessing this, and the cubs are lying under the vehicle, and she's on her way there as well.
There's no lunch for them, but the cubs seem fine with that. Now they have more time to play.
So the mum just came to this vehicle to join her cubs. This is the only shade around, and they need to improvise, and they are really having a good time lying under the vehicle. There's 3 cubs here, and extremely playful, and obviously enjoying the new tires that's in this vehicle and giving it a good chew. These guys are going to be stuck here for a while. I'm trying to make sure that none of these cubs come and lie down under our car, because the moment they get under your car, you ain't going anywhere. And these cheetahs are pretty much down for the rest of the day, so I hope these guys have lunch with them. Or maybe there will be one. Check, it's going.
The tourists will have to stay put until the cheetahs decide to move, which will most likely mean a few more hours until the temperature starts to cool and the cheetahs head off to find dinner. The wildebeest herds will spend the next few months in the short grass plains, feeding on the rich grasses and nurturing their young. But soon the rains will start moving north, signaling the herds that it's time to get going again. The wildebeest migration is not just a defining piece of life on the Serengeti. It is also a key driver of the ecosystem. Over the course of the year, the millions of wildebeest drastically affect the landscape. The animals graze on the grasses like a giant team of lawnmowers, allowing new shoots to grow and keeping the plains healthy. With millions of wildebeests, there's a lot of waste. Some of that dung fertilizes the grass, which in turn helps it to grow for the next time the animals pass. But there is so much dung that nature has developed other solutions to make sure the plains are not overwhelmed. On the Serengeti, an army of its smallest residents go to work.
We just came upon this great dung beetle making a dung ball out of some zebra droppings. It's incredible to actually watch the whole thing happen from the beginning, where this beetle has almost cut out this ball and then selecting this really good pieces of dung to complete the ball. And it's using these spade-like legs to pat it down and make it round. What it's going to do now is we'll start to roll it, and the idea about the rolling is to now cover it in soil, making a really solid casing that will eventually protect the egg and then later on the larvae that's going to be inside this wet pile of dung. Ah, there we go, quite amazing. Look at that. This thing is like 10 times the size of this dung beetle, and it's moving it. It's not only going to move it, it's going to push it quite a considerable distance. And the idea about the distance pushing is now to cover this wet mud with this soil.
Insect life is crucial to the ecosystem and true to the Serengeti's epic nature. Even the small creatures do things in big ways. Scattered throughout Africa are impressive structures built of mud and clay. These are termite mounds. Their architects, although tiny, have a huge role to play.
With 2.5 million mammals in the migration, one would think that nothing can really outcompete them when it comes to the amount of grass that's consumed. But the true champions are, in fact, these little guys. Within a termite mound, there's no sexes. Theoretically, they are all sterile females, but they are categorized in classes. And what I see here are lots of different individuals doing different functions. There's some bringing up the mud, building the mound, and there's others that will be collecting dead plant materials. But then there's these big guys, the soldiers, who would just be walking around and they're constantly tapping their head. It's like a signal, and I'm sure they're a little bit disturbed with me being here, and that's a signal that they're giving that there is some threat close by, and their sole purpose will be to defend all these smaller ones, which are completely helpless.
These harvested termites don't actually carry the dead plant material in their mandibles, but they would swallow it and regurgitate it when they get back into the mound. These plants then act as a substrate for fungi to grow in. That is what these termites eat. That's also one of the main reasons for these chimneys, is that it creates an air conditioning system that maintains a constant temperature within the mound of about 26, 27 degrees Celsius, and it's just a perfect environment for fungi to grow.
These harvester termites eat enormous amounts of grass and plant material. Their eating habits and the placement of these mounds changes soil textures.
In Africa, there's lots of different types of mounds that one can find, and
the bulk of the mound goes down, and if I look down into these chimneys, it is at least 8 feet down that the actual air vent goes. Because these termites are not actually living inside the air vents, they've got no problem with other creatures making use of such a safe environment. This mound have a hive of African honeybees living inside here. I can constantly see them coming and going. But even more interesting is there's some sort of predator living in here, a small predator that predominantly feed off something like millipedes, because I can see a lot of millipede shells lying around, and there's even a dead bird inside. This is just such a fantastic entire ecosystem.
The shortgrass plains in the south of the Serengeti are beginning to dry out. The rains are moving north. As always, the wildebeest instinct compels them to follow. Instinct tells them the rains will lead them to better grazing land. The babies have survived their first 3 months and are getting stronger. They need to, because in just 2 months' time, they will face the greatest challenge of their lives: their first crossing of the crocodile-infested Mara River. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has been checking in with the herds at various points on their annual route. Along the way, he's taking time to explore some of the dynamic relationships in the Serengeti's ecosystem. The Serengeti is one of the few unspoiled places on the planet. This makes it a perfect place to see how an ecosystem evolves to support a variety of species. Everything from a blade of grass to the predators and the giants of Africa all play their roles, and they're all interconnected. Remove one, and the whole ecosystem can be thrown out of balance. The savanna elephant is a large animal, and its impact on this ecosystem is equally large. Elephants are bulk feeders and eat a lot of foliage. So their role in this symbiotic system is to maintain the savanna and woodlands by reducing tree density and keeping the forest from overrunning the grass plains. Some species flourish by developing a survival mechanism that draws some and repels others. Trees develop nutritious leaves or tasty fruit to encourage animals to eat. The animals then move on and deposit seeds from the trees in a new location, in a fresh pile of fertilizer. But too much of a good thing can be bad for the trees, so they have also evolved ways of keeping browsers like elephant and giraffe from eating too much.
This is an acacia tortilis, and this is one of the most common trees in the Serengeti. And what's interesting is that it's also one of the most nutritious leaves, and probably the tree of choice for something like a giraffe. In the rest of the world, there's over 800 different species of acacia. Most of the acacia species have not got thorns, and they completely evolved in Africa as a form of protection against these massive browsers. But still, the giraffe managed to find a way to get past these thorns with a prehensile tongue that can really go in between these thorns and completely strip off these little leaves. And giraffes are highly efficient, so they are obviously getting what they need to live out on these sometimes very barren plains. Another interesting thing about these acacias are that they've got these tiny, tiny little leaves. And the main reason is to allow maximum sun to reach the leaf, but to avoid it losing too much moisture, making it possible for this tree to survive in such dry and arid environments.
Even something as routine as one species having a bath can have benefits for another species in an ecosystem that's evolved in an interconnected way.
This is central Serengeti, where there's water all year round, and we just came upon a nice breeding group of elephants that came down for their morning drink. And there's huge excitement between some of the adolescents as they go down into the river and having a good old swim and a nice wash.
In a balanced ecosystem, even something as routine as a bath can have benefits for a number of species. As the elephants splash and play, they widen the wallow, which means it can hold more water. It also creates more access so other animals can come to drink.
There's one elephant here that's having a good old scratch. It's a good way of getting rid of ticks, you know, with the kind of mud. It's a little bit of like a body paint that scratches off all the ticks. He's coming out now. It's really important for elephants to get to water on a fairly regular basis. Their skins are about double the size as it seems, and it's all kind of wrinkled up. And by rolling around in mud and water like this, a lot of water gets trapped in these folds, and that will actually keep them cool when they're out on the plains that are extremely hot during the middle of the day. Got a nice female. But I think she didn't like me calling her a female. They had the most incredible wash and play and rub, you know, it's like a massive spa that they found here. This would be a very popular little water hole in such hot, dry climates as right now. I heard one of these older cows make what we call a tummy rumble as one of their communication signals. That's generally a sign that they want some kind of movement. I'm sure one of these two here are probably the matriarch, and she's in charge of this little breeding group, and she probably feels like she had enough now and it's time to move on. And these younger ones does not seem in the mood to be moving on.
As the central Serengeti enters its dry season and streams and rivers disappear, these wallows will become refuges for another one of Africa's great species.
Behind me is the Orangi River, and this is one of many seasonal rivers in the Serengeti. The catchment area for this river is coming off the short grass plains, and it only feeds into this river during the rain season. Right here is a little bit of a dammed area where obviously hippos are having a great time, and it's quite a popular tourist stop where one can have easy access to such great herds of hippos. Unfortunately for these guys, as it gets drier and drier, all of this water will eventually dry up, and that can be quite catastrophic for hippos in extreme dry seasons. Fortunately, hippos do have a little bit of a backup system that can give them a few more days when it's completely dry. They release their own type of sunscreen that's referred to as blood sweat, and that will turn a hippo red and will give him another 2, 3, maybe up to 5 days to survive, hopefully waiting for rain to arrive. These hippos can have a bit of a tough time during certain times of the year, which is very different to hippos up in the northern Serengeti living in the Mara River that's got a year-round supply of water.
It's July in the Serengeti, and the wildebeests have begun their migration back up north towards Kenya. The newborns are getting stronger each day. They'll need that strength. In a few weeks' time, they will face their biggest challenge of their lives, the crossing of the treacherous Mara River. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has been tracking the herd since they began their journey 9 months ago.
So the migration is heading north at the moment. It seems like it's split up into two groups, one group going west and another group going east. Now the problem is that the group going east is heading into the Serengeti wilderness zone that's inaccessible to us, and the group heading west are heading into private game reserves where we also cannot go into. So our only hope is to reconnect with this group as they are heading the northern Serengeti and maybe get together again and form one of these huge mega herds.
For Jean, the good news is that the wildebeest will be moving very fast, and for good reason. They're moving through the woodlands, and the wildebeest feel vulnerable here. Lions and other predators have lots of cover, which gives them a great advantage when it comes to hunting wildebeest. The central part of the Serengeti is entering its dry season. As the rains move north, the rivers and streams begin to recede, leaving only small pockets of water. This affects different species in different ways. These small pools of water become gathering places for animals to drink and cool off. And that makes a perfect place for predators like lions to find their next meal.
I just drove over the small bridge and there's a male lion lying on the side of this river. This is the kind of the beginning of the Grumeti River, and they've killed a zebra and they've eaten quite a bit. They are really thick. It seems like he's going to pull us back to the shade. What probably happened here is these zebras came down to drink, and these males ambushed them. It looks like fairly young males. You know, their manes are not completely full yet. So it's quite hard for these males to make a kill. So this is a perfect place for these males to be lying up, waiting for these zebras to come down and drink. And that's more than likely what happened. And he's trying to kind of pull us back into the shade now, but it's so hot and he needs to decide where he's going to preserve his energy. There's actually a big croc on the river as well that's eyeing up that carcass. That lion is giving a roar, and also see this crocodile opening his mouth and probably hissing back at the lion. It's quite amazing seeing something like this.
Crocodiles have evolved to live in water, where they are fast and agile hunters. They're not really designed to attack on land. When the rivers dry up, the crocs lose most of their predatory advantage, and they have to become scavengers if they want to eat. Nothing of this animal will go to waste. There is always another species that will line up to take over when another is done. The lion is so stuffed, his belly is stretched, but even still, he is reluctant to concede defeat and leave his prize to the croc. The lion retreats. Backing off was a good decision for the young lion. Even on land and out of its element, a croc is a formidable foe. It has the strongest bite force in the animal kingdom, at least 3 times that of a lion. While the crocodiles in this little river do what they can to get a meal, their brothers in the Mara River are in their element and getting ready for their annual feast.
This is the Mara River, and this is the last major obstacle that these newborns will have to contend with. But not only do they need to cross this river and potentially choose a bad crossing place and die in the thousands, They also need to navigate themselves around monster crocodiles that's lying here waiting for an entire year for this very crossing.
There's a huge crocodile in the river. What's extremely interesting about crocodiles in general are that they are cold-blooded, so they don't need to eat food on a daily basis to keep their body temperatures warm. A croc of this size only needs one decent meal once a year. These huge Nile crocodiles are probably our best look into what massive dinosaurs look like. They have stayed unchanged since the dinosaur era, and probably the best example of something that's so custom designed to the way they live. And they didn't need to evolve much since those early days. You know, they can completely submerge themselves with only their nostrils and their eyes above the water, and still even then it just looks like 4 pebbles that's in the river, and get right in close to make effective kills. For us to experience crocodiles making a kill, it's very important to be here the moment these first herds of wildebeest will arrive at the riverbanks and start crossing, because that's when a crocodile will more than likely make a kill.
It's now August, and soon the wildebeest herds will be back at the Mara River. This is where Jean started to track the herd almost a year ago. The journey has covered 10 months, and it is almost at an end. The Mara River is the lifeblood of the northern Serengeti ecosystem. It spans 2 countries, beginning in the highlands of southern Kenya, snaking its way across the Tanzanian border and emptying into Lake Victoria. Its constant flows divides the park into 2. The wildebeest are headed to open grasslands on the opposite side of the river, where they'll spend the next 3 months.
I'm on my way to try and find the front end of the migration, and this time of year they already should have been kind of all over the northern part of Serengeti, but I'm just driving hill after hill and plane after plane, and there's absolutely nothing out here, and it's a little bit disheartening, you know, to just not see a thing around. An entire industry is dependent upon the migration that was supposed to be here already about a month ago. And for some reason it seems that they have flanked to the north and a little bit to the west of this very crucial northern Serengeti, or called Kokatenda area.
As the week progresses, there is still no sign of the wildebeest. Jean has no choice but to wait them out. The herds were last seen heading out of the Serengeti National Park into private land where even wildlife experts like Jean are not allowed. Where and when the wildebeest will re-enter the park is anyone's guess. The reason for the delay is the lack of rain. The wildebeest herds follow the rain, but no rain means the grasses, which should be lush and green, are still dry and brown. Soon, storm clouds begin to build on the horizon, fueled by moisture from nearby Lake Victoria. Little by little, they grow into massive thunderclouds until they burst in a torrent of rain. These short, intense storms crisscross the northern Serengeti and head towards the grasslands north of the Mara River. It only takes a few days of rain to give life to the land, and before long, the area is green with new grass. All that's left now is for the wildebeest to come.
So I arrived in the area a little bit early, The migration is yet to arrive, but there were some big thunder showers last night, and that generally will pull in the herds. So there's not much more to do but to sit and wait here, and I can imagine worse places to wait than here in the Serengeti.
And with the rains, the wildebeest begin to move. Now the question is, where will they show up? The next morning, Jean gets out at first light in search of the advancing herds he knows will be coming.
In front of me is where we saw that storm last night, and an area in front of us is called Bolagonja, and behind me is Crocodile. And I suspect to find the big herds just over this rise. But the big concern is that if they just go slightly east, they can go into Kenya and cross the river in the Masai Mara, which is on the Kenyan side, meaning that the entire northern Tanzania is going to miss out on seeing a migration and river crossings this season. Kenya is actually just a couple of kilometers over that way, but to reach that, we have to go all the way back to Arusha, and that's about a 2-day journey to then get into the Masai Mara. So I really hope that the animals that's potentially in front of us is going to swing west and come a little bit downriver and do have a couple of crossings down on the Tanzania side.
But Jean doesn't have to wait long. Just over the next rise, he finds that the wildebeest have arrived. There are so many animals, they dominate the plains and surrounding hills.
We just crossed a little stream, and all of these wildebeest are coming down to drink. It's about midday, very hot. So there are thousands around.
They are moving towards the Mara River to make the crossing. Now the question is, where will they cross? Will they head into Kenya, or will they stay in Tanzania? A male shows interest in a passing female. It will soon be the annual rut when the wildebeest will mate again. For now, though, they have a river to cross.
So we just came over a hill and we hit the Mara River, and there's a big group of wildebeest that's starting to pack along the banks of the river. And this is normally a good sign of them wanting to cross. The general direction is to keep on going north. So these animals are definitely lining up for a crossing. It might happen today, might happen tomorrow morning. I mean, the only way you're going to see it is to hang around and wait.
The wildebeest migration is one of the greatest spectacles in the animal kingdom. They spend their lives almost constantly on the move, in a circle that takes them around the Serengeti. It's August, and they are heading back north. One obstacle remains, the crossing of the crocodile-infested Mara River.
So we just came over a hill and we hit the Mara River, and there's a big group of wildebeest that's starting to pack along the banks of the river. And this is normally a good sign of them wanting to cross. It might happen today, might happen tomorrow morning. I mean, the only way you're going to see it is to hang around and wait.
Jean will keep following the herds. It was 6 months ago that the young wildebeest were born. This river crossing is a major event for adult wildebeests who have done this before. But this is the first time that the little ones have ever seen or experienced this river. Evolution has timed the birth so that the newborns have had enough time to develop their strength and coordination before they encounter the river.
Yeah, this group in front of me is probably about 2,000 to 3,000 and counting, but off to the north there's another group of a couple of thousand. It seems like they would see these guys running and they're on their way here, but then down to the south there's another very large group that's also pushing onto the river. So I think I'm in the best position now to kind of scout all the areas, and we'll see where it starts to happen and then make a choice from there.
Jean has timed his arrival perfectly. The second column of wildebeest advancing up the western side has now broken out of the wilderness zone and into Kagatende. They are heading straight towards him. It is shaping up to be a mega crossing. In spite of the presence of thousands of wildebeest on the shores, the crocodiles lie still. Crossing point after crossing point is passed up as the lead animals assess their chances of survival. Finally, they choose. And a single animal descends, unleashing a waterfall of wildebeest behind. These animals don't plan to wait. They are ready to cross. The first wildebeest jumps, followed by its yearling. The others follow in behind them. Within seconds, hundreds of animals begin to snake their way across the river. The crocs are drawn to the commotion.
So these wildebeest have been crossing the whole morning, and there's 2 or 3 huge crocodiles that's making their way in the line of wildebeest crossing.
The crocs get into position as the wildebeest struggle to get up the other side. Having seen the crocs, the rest of the herd stops crossing. Two crocs take aim on a yearling, but luckily the animal finds ground below the water and is able to outmaneuver them. They quickly scramble up the far bank to safety. One of the crocs has caught a wildebeest.
Just towards the end of the crossing, there was this enormous croc that got hold of a yearling that was struggling to get up the rocks, and it pulled it down, and then the second crocodile came in and literally just took the entire head of this wildebeest in his mouth, and all of them submerged, and that's the last we ever saw of all of them.
With too many crocs to contend with, the wildebeest have moved on to a new crossing point just downriver.
We've been sitting here now for probably the last 30 minutes. A constant stream of animals just streaming through the river. I would estimate about now 10,000 animals at least have crossed in front of us.
The wildebeest live out their entire life cycle as a tribe of nomads on the Serengeti plains. Constantly on the move, stopping only briefly before they follow the rains again in search of the next green pasture. They have evolved as great sustainers of the plains, caretakers of the land, and also food for the predators along the way. It's a naturally evolved, perfectly balanced ecosystem, with every blade of grass, every creature on land, and bird in the sky playing its part in this continuous cycle of life on the Serengeti Plains.
So this is it. This migration of wildebeest and zebra are one of the last remaining mega migrations of the planet. And what makes this so successful is the fact that the Serengeti has been kept intact for so many years. The wildebeest crossed over into Kenya, and this is the completion of that circle, where they would eventually, in a couple of months, start to be pulled down back into central Serengeti because of thunder showers that start up that way.
Wildlife expert Jean du Plessis descends into one of Africa's great natural wonders.
This is really like Eden. It's hard to imagine how it can really get bettered.
The search is on for one of Africa's last great tuskers.
I'm driving into an area of a huge amount of wildlife, and we're looking for the big bull elephant.
He encounters a unique truce between two apex predators.
The crater floor must be the ideal environment for hyenas.
And then he journeys to a secret waterfall.
It gets really busy around these falls, and it just gets more and more intense.
Spectacular wildlife ecosystem is not something that happens by chance. It develops over time, where everything in it evolves together, influenced by the weather and shaped by the geography of the land. When these two elements work in harmony, the results can be spectacular. One of the best examples of this is in northern Tanzania. It has been called one of the greatest natural wonders on Earth. This is Ngorongoro. The Ngorongoro Highlands is a series of extinct volcanoes that once stood as high as Mount Kilimanjaro. A cataclysmic eruption 2 million years ago caused it to collapse, creating a massive crater 20 kilometers across and 600 meters deep that today is home to the highest concentration of mammals in the world. The volcano's outer slopes are covered by a thick montane forest that is home to a healthy population of elephants. Just by itself, Ngorongoro is spectacular, but it plays a far bigger role in the ecology of the area. To its north, Ngorongoro's major eruption buried the surrounding area in a thick layer of ash, creating the Serengeti Plains. The Ngorongoro's highlands act like a barrier, trapping the seasonal rains and turning what would otherwise be a dry and dusty plain into a lush green ecosystem that supports an incredible diversity of wildlife. But where it gives so generously to its north, it denies on the south. This is the Great Rift Valley. It's a massive scar caused by tectonic forces that are splitting Africa in two. It's home to many different animal species, including a healthy population of elephants. But in the dry season, the elephants all make their way inland to Lake Manyara and Tarangire National Parks. Both are in Ngorongoro's rain shadow. Although the area does not get abundant rain, the Ngorongoro Highlands offer the southern land's water that trickles down from the mountains. That bit of water is a lifeline that sustains a small but rich and diverse ecosystem. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis is at Lake Manyara National Park.
The water coming down these waterfalls behind me
is a result of rain that falls up in the Ngorongoro crater highlands and then siphons through the ground and ends up in these streams that all rush out into Manyara. This is the point where this Enderbush River will disappear into the sand and continue down to the lake as an underground river. It's interesting to see here where the water disappears into the sand that it's like a minefield of elephant droppings. This clearly is the most favorable place for elephants to come and have a morning and a late afternoon drink, and the whole time during the day we'll have different herds coming through. At the moment we are in a bit of an in-between season where there's quite a bit of water coming down the falls, but as we're progressing into the dry season, the point where the water disappears will become closer and closer to the base of the waterfalls, up until where we get into the middle of September, October, where it's extremely dry, and the only thing we will have will be a tiny trickle of water coming down the rocks and a tiny puddle at the base of the waterfalls.
It's now September and well into the dry season. The rains in the Ngorongoro highlands have stopped and the waterfalls have been reduced to a trickle. Lake Manyara is beginning to dry up. Those falls become very important to wildlife in the park.
This is more than likely a small group that came in here early evening to drink. There's lots of signs of tracks all over the place, which tells me that different groups of elephants came in here during the evening. The water here must be some of the only water remaining in this Rift Valley system. It gets really busy around these falls towards sunset, and where you have herds from all across this area meeting here, and elephants don't generally do well with such a large congregation of different family groups. There's a lot of tension and stress, and it just gets more and more intense as the season gets dry. It can create quite a stressful situation for elephants. It's very loud, very sensory.
There are so many females drinking at the falls that it attracts the attention of a male elephant that has come into musth. And that adds another dynamic to an already tense situation. Musth is a periodic condition that signals the elephant's intent to mate. Elephant males only go into musth every 10 or 12 years. When they do, their behavior becomes erratic, even dangerous. Their testosterone level can be as high as 60 times normal levels. Even the most placid male becomes territorial and aggressive. Judging from his size, this elephant is about 40 years old. He's big enough to do more than a bit of damage if he's provoked. In elephants, the musth phase doesn't make him more attractive to females. In fact, because of the aggression, the mom and baby decide to leave. It's just too dangerous to hang around. After a bit of showboating, he realizes the females are only interested in a drink, so he heads downriver in search of another group. It's now October in Tanzania's Rift Valley, and it's several months into the dry season. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has moved on to Serengeti National Park. Several months without rain has caused many of the park's rivers to dry up. This is life in the rain shadow of the Ngorongoro Highlands. No rain will fall now for months, and the wildlife that lives in the area all pull in closer to the base of the highlands, where the few lakes and rivers are fed by water that trickles down from above.
This river is the lifeline of Serengeti National Park, and especially now during the dry season, when the surrounding areas are extremely dry, it's like a magnet pulling in all sorts of animals, and especially herds of elephants, into the river. And what will generally happen would be in the early mornings, a family group like this would move into the river and have a drink, only to start to move out about now into the higher lying areas where there's more shade and cover, and then come back again late afternoon for another drink.
Elephants have an extremely well-developed sense of smell. They can smell sources of water that are several miles away, and also water that is running below ground.
Although there might be a little bit of surface water on the river right now, for most of the year, this river actually flows subterraneanly. Elephants have evolved this great way to allow constant access to the water by digging big holes. I'm going to just do a little dig here to see how deep the water actually is. And the deeper you go, you eventually start to access water. This time of year, an elephant does not need to work hard at all, but as the season dries out, they will have to dig bigger and bigger holes. And then as other animals come, like zebras, the sides will fall in and it will become larger and larger. So eventually to have quite a nice pond. And the water is a little bit dusty now, but in a few minutes, this water, the dust will settle and it will be very clear. This is the Baobab tree, which is such an iconic feature on these dry African landscapes. And it's a tree that creates a lot of debate between scientists. Obviously, looking so enormous, it must clearly be very old. Some scientists believe that it's not that old, where it can only about 800 years of age, a big tree like this, where some others believe it's over 3,000 years old. The challenge with baobabs are that they haven't got any growth rings. The tree is actually hollow inside and very, very fibrous and actually quite soft. And generally soft wood trees will grow quite fast. These trees form the most incredible habitats for all sorts of animals, from insects all the way through to man. And it's commonly known that these hollow insides of baobabs have formed houses, hides, and even shops to some human communities. Out here in Serengeti National Park, where this is probably one of the most common features of the park, it's home to baboons, leopards, quite commonly occupied by an owl. The danger for these trees are when a severe drought might hit a system, that elephants can actually completely destroy them. If too many elephants start to feed on it and use their tusks to break off pieces of tree, it will kill a tree. One can clearly see here how the bark has been ripped away by elephants, and there's some tusk marks here where elephants will come in and put their tusks in and rip out pieces of this bark. Almost all other trees, when the bark is stripped completely around the tree, will die because nutrients cannot move up and down anymore. But baobabs are completely different, where it's not dependent on an outside bark. These trees will continue to survive, and that's a great feat to survive in an environment full of elephants.
Serengeti's main river flows from the highlands, snaking its way through the park, ending in a series of swamps.
I'm coming up onto Silali swamps,
which is one of the largest wetland systems in this greater Tarangire ecosystem, and the last refuge for family groups of elephants during these extreme dry seasons. And as I'm driving up on it, I can see various groups all scattered through the swamp, and as the system dries out, those numbers of elephants will just increase.
Jean's trips to the swamp come to a full halt when he sees an irresistible baby elephant.
Is really having a good time thrashing around in the water. It's interesting that none of the other elephants are in there, and it's clearly having a fantastic time, just rolling around, getting completely submerged. It's a really young baby, younger than a year, and it's just having an absolute ball. Is younger than a year, and a good way to tell age at such a young age is that they can fit under the belly of a mum. That's generally an indication of being younger than a year. This is really amazing all around me, where there's herds of elephants everywhere, little family groups here. There's a group of 50 right around me, and then all the way through the swamp, there's tiny family groups just making the swamp full of elephants. And the younger ones are much more to the shoreline where it's not so deep, but all the way into the center of the swamp one can see big males standing, and the only thing we can see of them are the ears flapping. And it's really the perfect place for an elephant to be right now. It's a lot to eat and a lot to drink, and it's very safe. One thing about Tanzania, it's just fantastic, is that you've got these endless corridors of especially animals like elephants that can move fairly undisturbed from areas as far as Ngorongoro crater, coming through those montane forests into Lake Manyara, and then can follow a corridor around Lake Manyara all the way into Tarangire. So, in effect, the old bull could have really been born thousands of kilometers from here, and slowly through his lifetime made his way across and through these different corridors to end up in a place like this. Looking at this swamp with 50 elephants here, another group on the far side, and basically all the way running north, just filled with elephants, it's hard to imagine how elephants can be endangered. But the success of a species is really determined by the availability of an habitat during the dry season. Of course, there's a lot of areas for these elephants to go to when it's wet, but it's the protection of these areas that can give them or can guarantee them survival during the dry seasons. That is very important to look after, and it's these microcosms such as Salali swamps, the crater floor, Serengeti plains, where elephants have a safe haven to go to when conditions get too harsh outside of parks. And harsh can mean many things. You know, in this case it's dry, no water, but as human populations expand and it becomes harder for elephants to find that safe refuge, this will be where it is into the future.
southern side of Ngorongoro, the dry season runs from May through to October, when the short rains begin. The name doesn't refer to the amount of rain, but rather the season. The short rain season lasts only for a few months, and it very quickly brings an end to the dry season.
All of last night I could hear loud thunder on top of the escarpment, which clearly indicates massive amount of rain. And this river have a huge catchment area. This morning there was a tiny little trickle coming down the rocks, but now it is steadily increasing to becoming huge currents, and I expect this afternoon these rocks will be covered by water coming down off the highlands.
After the pools at the base of the river fill, water begins to flow. At first as a trickle in the sand. As the water from the highlands begins to collect in the tributaries, the river suddenly swells, and within an hour, huge torrents of water arrive at the falls. Before long, a group of elephants emerges from the forest. They have smelled the water. They know the river is flowing. It's been a long dry season for these elephants. For elephants, water is not only crucial for drinking, they also need it to take care of themselves. An elephant's skin is thick and requires the moisture to help keep it healthy.
I'm sitting in our Manyara camp, and this large group of elephants came down to drink at the river. And literally minutes before they arrived, this river flooded. And a river that had no water in this morning suddenly was full bank to bank. And it was quite interesting seeing the obvious joy in them to be going into the water and enjoying a late afternoon drink.
As the water flows, it rejuvenates the land, the trees, and forests that so many other species depend on.
This Endofbash River is by far the largest river flowing into Lake Manyara. This is Lake Manyara, and this is where all the water from the highlands eventually end up in. This is a really old lake, estimate about 3 million years old, and it used to be at least 5 times the size of what it is today. There's no outlet out of Manyara, making it very, very alkaline, very soda, the perfect environment for blue-green algae to live in, which becomes the food of these lesser flamingos. Every night, a female with an egg that's nesting in Lake Natron, that's about 100 kilometers north from here,
will fly back there to feed her chicks. But in the morning, they will fly back here to come and feed.
The species' prime source of food is blue-green algae that only grows in very alkaline lakes. Flamingos have filaments that hang from their beaks, and as they go along the water, the filaments filter out bacteria. The bacteria is what gives flamingos their distinct coloration.
Right now, the flamingos are quite far off into the lake, so I'm going to try and take a canoe and get a bit closer to them. However, this lake is very shallow, and I might have to push the canoe quite a bit before it will float. Let's see if we are stuck. Nope, there we go. I'm going to head a little bit off to our right. Getting a little bit closer to these flamingos now. You can see that they've been sitting here in the middle of the lake for the whole day, so their wings are stiff, and they're definitely seeing me, and they're starting to spread their wings out and getting it ready to fly if they have to. But it's interesting for me that they are all in a band here. Maybe there's a soil change where you will find more blue-green algae. So we're just slowly drifting in. They are looking at us into the sun, so we might be able to get slightly closer than what we would being on the other side. They're getting a little bit nervous of us coming closer.
The sub-Saharan breed of the flamingos are the lesser flamingos. The name refers to their size. They're the smallest of the breed, but even still have an impressive wingspan of 90 to 105 centimeters. Back on the shores, Jean comes across another unique natural event that is brought on by the first rains.
I'm on the shores of Lake Manyara, and the sun is setting, and as the sun's going down, one can see this reflection of millions of strands of silk, and it's really interesting what it is. It's newly hatched spiders that's doing something called ballooning. So they would climb to the top of a kind of piece of grass and just start to release silk. And as the silk gets longer and longer, eventually the wind just lifts up this entire spider and blows it away. And this is how spiders get distributed all across the world. And a spider like this might end up in a thermal, taking it 50,000 feet into the sky and blowing it to the other side of the planet. It's absolutely everywhere, and it's astonishing that one never sees these spiders, but all around us are millions. There's one right here. And tiny spiders that's making their little bodies into like a ball and just kind of cruising through the sky.
Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has arrived at the Ngorongoro crater. It's a spectacular volcanic caldera that was created over 2 million years ago, when the Ngorongoro volcano erupted so violently that it collapsed into itself, forming a perfectly symmetrical crater 20 kilometers across and 600 meters deep. Today, the crater floor is home to the highest concentration of wildlife in Africa, including all of Africa's most iconic animals, like lion and hyena. It's also home to a number of Africa's last big tusked elephants. The big tuskers are older males drawn to the crater floor's many swamps. There is one elephant in particular that is of interest to Jean. The word is that an old male with magnificent tusks has not been seen in a while, and there are concerns that he might have died.
This caldera is such an amazing natural environment, and especially for old bull elephants, this is like a final retreat where they come and live their last days. And there's one particular bull that I would love to see. He's got the most amazing ivory, about 100 pounds a side, and it's a very rare sight these days to see these big bulls, and especially big bulls with big ivory. There's been talk about the last remaining large tusker dying in the crater, but recently someone said there's still one left, so I'm off on a mission today and try and find him.
Africa's tusker numbers have been decimated by sport hunters who have targeted them specifically for trophies, and by poachers who kill elephants to supply the illegal ivory trade.
I'm driving to an area with a huge amount of wildlife, and there's scattered pools of elephants in between the wildebeest and zebras, and we're going a bit closer now to see if the big bull we're looking for might be in between them. I'm gonna have a look at this group of bulls ahead. There's 5 or 6 over here, but quite a few more groups off in the distance, and then some scattered lone males as well. So I'll pull up here and start to scan them a bit, because the best way to see them is to just stop and take your time and look through it. There's a lot of bulls down here with some seriously large ivory, but it's not the one we're looking for. That elephant we're after have ivory that's almost touching the ground, and he's struggling to walk. He needs to keep his head up. It's extremely rare to see elephants like that, and he likes to hang out in swamps. So we're gonna have to continue and look a bit more. However, these ones have impressive ivory as well.
The Ngorongoro crater gives us a glimpse into what parts of wild Africa must have looked like 100 years ago or more. It has largely remained cut off and secluded from human advancement that has decimated wildlife across much of the continent. Jean is heading to an area where small rivers feed several swamps. It's a place he knows he's guaranteed to find old bulls.
I'm at one of the major water holes in the crater, and we found a great old bull elephant in it. And this is a great example of why elephants kind of make the crater almost like a retirement home. Elephants have 6 sets of molar teeth through their life, and they gradually use those up as they grow old. And when they are between 55 and 60, they've generally used up all of their teeth. So it's very hard for them to live out in the forests and feed on things like bark and twigs and stuff. So they need to come down to places with swamps and soft grass, and the crater floor is perfect for that, with quite a few of these little swamps. Yeah, this guy's having a good old time feeding on some of this water lettuce. You know, it's sad though that this is where elephants start to decline. Feeding on greenery like this does not sustain these huge bodies, so elephants slowly decline from here. And that's where the term elephant graveyards come from, because generally elephants would die in swampy areas like this. This morning we've already seen a huge amount of male elephant on the floor, and I think that number is increasing the whole time as there's males on the rim, of course, that's getting older.
Ngorongoro has resisted attempts to change it. At the turn of the century, German settlers tried to colonize the area and cultivate the crater floor. They tried to clear the area of all its wildlife, but it was a losing battle, and they gave up and moved out. Ironically, it was because of sport hunting that the area ultimately won its conservation status. It became a protected area in the 1920s as part of the Serengeti Game Reserve. Now its healthy population of animals living their natural lives is bringing in tourists. Some feel that tourists coming through in vehicles is an environmental problem in the making.
You know, and who said the crater is overrun and spoiled? The only thing that is overrun with is animals. Here in this plain in front of me must be 30,000 animals of 15 different species. Quite an incredible sight. There's very few places in the world where one can witness something like this.
Night is starting to fall. Aside from the park rangers, no one is allowed on the crater floor. So Jean will make his way back up to spend the night at La Mola Camp on the crater rim. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis is in the Ngorongoro crater, where he is searching for one of the last great tusker elephants. Tuskers are elephants with enormous ivory, and they have been in steady decline in Africa because of sport hunting and illegal poaching for ivory. He is searching for one particular male, a legendary old and rare elephant with tusks so huge it has difficulty lifting its head when walking. The elephant has not been seen in some time, and no one knows if it has moved away from the crater floor or if the great tusker has died. It's day 2 for Jean's search, and he is out early. Ngorongoro has a high population of elephants, but they are usually found in the montane forests above.
There's a breeding herd of elephants on the crater floor, and this is extremely unique. In 20 years of working and being on the crater floor, I've never seen females and calves right here on the bottom of the floor, sometimes on the edges of the forests. But to see them on the floor is almost unheard of. They are very nervous. They are running from side to side, and any vehicle starting up and any new noise obviously scares them and they change direction. It's not an uncommon thing to see elephants on open plains like in the Serengeti, but that would be a matriarch that knows the area. She's been there many times, and her confidence trickles down to the rest of the herd, making them all feel confident. This is completely the opposite, where they are all nervous. They all have their trunks up the whole time, smelling, trying to take in new scents. This matriarch has never been here. This is going to be a tough day for them, and I hope they eventually find their way to the west of the crater where there's a nice forest with fever trees. So at the moment they're still out on the plains. They've calmed down a little bit, and I think they're also really tired.
Jean will keep an eye on this group. Hopefully, they will find their way out. Jean decides to move to higher ground, where he has a better vantage point and can scout for the tusker. On his way, he comes across a pride of lions. Like most animals in the crater, there is unique behavior here among predators. An average lion pride's home range in the Serengeti is about 200 square kilometers, but that's not possible here in the confined area of the Ngorongoro. There have been as many as 6 prides at one time within the crater's 260 square kilometers. And by the look of these two, they will add to those numbers.
It seems like there's 2 mating pairs in this pride of lions, and it's interesting looking at this pride here. I am not seeing any cubs. So it is possible that a takeover happened here fairly recently. Basically, when males take over a pride of females, they would do something that's quite rare in the animal kingdom. It's called infanticide. It's killing all the cubs that does not belong to them. And by doing that, they ensure that they will mate with these females and raise their own litter. The females that would have lost their cubs will then go into estrus all at the same time, about 3 months after the takeover. So the males will mate with them. So generally all the cubs inside a pride will be the same age.
Unlike the Serengeti, where lion territories and territorial males change often, shaking up the gene pool, the crater population has remained static, which has led to problems at times. inbreeding has weakened the genetics of the population. Lions have an interesting hierarchy. The females do a lot of the hunting and raise the cubs. Once the cubs are born, it's the male's job to keep the prides intact by defending against roaming or nomadic males. If the dominant males lose or are killed, the nomadic males take over the pride and kill all of the cubs. So Mother Nature has come up with a unique solution.
Quite hard for females to conceive. Reason being is that so many males might come through and try and mate with them. Sometimes this pride of males will be with another pride of females that they are dominant over. And if a female hears an estrus and there's a nomadic male that comes through, he can get quite aggressive and they will actually mate with him, but they will not fall pregnant. So when the actual dominant males mate with them, they need to do that and mate about every 20 minutes for 5 days. It's estimated that there's about 1,500 copulations for every cub that reach 1 year old.
The number of predators an area can support is directly related to the amount of available prey. Unlike the Serengeti, where much of the prey species migrate through a predator's territory for a short period, in the crater, the populations are resident and fluctuate very little. That makes for a more stable food source. Because of the high number of animals, the crater floor can support a large variety of carnivores.
There's a really nice pack of hyenas over there. And the crater floor must be the ideal environment for hyenas, and certainly one of the most productive hyena environments in Africa. It's actually a misconception that hyenas are these massive scavengers, where here on the crater floor they would hunt at least 70% of their food themselves. Strange enough, lions will scavenge quite a bit, and quite often one would find lions chasing hyenas off kills that they've made. And the way these hyenas will hunt would be by basically running something tired. They've got such amazing stamina. It's that construction of tall front limbs and short back ones. They've got a very economic gait, and they can go for hours. And they would find a wildebeest and stick behind it for hours until that wildebeest can't move anymore, and then kill it. Looking at the number of hyenas versus lions we've seen over the last couple of days, it's kind of clear to me that the hyenas is winning this race right now. There's a really nice group of hyenas here with a lot of young pups. Pups of different sizes and ages, and there's 2 females. It's probably from the 2 of them. Within a hyena clan, there's a lot of jealousy and competition because of a hierarchy. The pups of the dominant female or the alpha female will always be under attack by lower ranking hyenas and their pups. Hyenas also have extremely rich milk, so that enables a mother to go off and hunt, feed, and potentially stay out there for a night or 2 before she will come back and feed her cubs, and the cubs will survive just on the milk that they drank before. This female off here to my right is a little bit bloody. She might have been in a fight, or they might have made a kill last night.
Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis is in the spectacular Ngorongoro crater. He's searching for an old tusker elephant that some fear may have died. He's an important animal, one of the last few remaining big-tusked elephants that remain in Africa. While Jean has been looking for the elephant, he has come across 2 of the most prominent predators on the crater floor. As Jean is watching the hyena, several of the animals with blood on their fur head off into the distance. This can only mean one thing: the hyena are feeding on a kill.
This is one of the coolest sightings I've seen in many years. It seems like what happened was these 2 male lions must have chased a buffalo. They didn't quite kill it, and it went for refuge in the water and died there. these hyenas must have seen what was going on, and now they are literally diving under the water, completely submerged, to take mouthfuls of meat. These two male lions are just lying on the edge, basically looking at their food, going for the hyenas.
Lions and hyenas. Normally, the two species battle over food and often steals each other's kills. But Jean finds the two species showing some unusual tolerance for one another. While Jean has been focusing on the situation between the lions and hyenas, something incredible happens.
Elephant we've been looking for the last couple of days just walked right through the scene. I mean, when in your life have you seen something like this, where you have these hyenas in the water, two male lions, and this the biggest elephant in the crater, probably in Africa, walked right through this picture. It's incredible. Most amazing tusks. This must be one of the largest elephants remaining in Africa, and especially the size of his tusks. They are well over 120 pounds each and perfect symmetry. It's very, very rare to see an elephant like this, and there must really only be a handful left in Africa. And this is one of the last of a kind. The gene of big tuskers are getting less and less, and it's going to be many years before elephants like this are out in the wild again. The crater is just such a perfect environment and place for these old males to survive and get old. All around the edge of the rim are observation points where rangers are looking into the crater and making sure that no poaching happens. And it's kind of been like this since the early 1900s, and poaching has been really, really under control here on the crater floor, allowing huge elephants like this to become old and massive like this.
This old elephant may be the last of a dying species. For decades, elephants with large tusks have been killed for their ivory. Scientists believe that with the big tusk gene being eradicated, elephants are now being born with smaller and smaller tusks. And it's possible that one day we may see elephants with no tusks at all. For now, though the Ngorongoro crater, formed more than 2 million years ago, remains a refuge for the old tuskers and their offspring, its geology has made a barrier that has allowed animal species to survive and thrive, giving us a glimpse of what Africa may have looked like if human populations had not moved in and demanded greater and greater resources, putting its own survival ahead of these truly magnificent species. Wildlife expert Jean du Plessis explores new heights as he climbs Africa's highest mountain, Kilimanjaro.
Okay, off we go.
Scientists predicted a quick demise for its famed glaciers, but 10 years on, they're still there.
There's just been an avalanche up there.
Now the question is, for how much longer?
Every year it's becoming smaller and smaller.
To get there, Jean will venture into thin air.
There's almost nothing surviving up at these altitudes.
At the southern end of the Serengeti lies the ruins of a massive volcano. More than 2 million years ago, in what must have been a spectacular event, an eruption emptied the volcano's magma chamber, causing a catastrophic collapse of the volcano, forming a massive caldera 20 kilometers across and burying the surrounding area in a thick layer of ash, creating Tanzania's lush Serengeti plains. 160 kilometers to the west stands another giant. Rising nearly 6,000 meters out of the savanna, Kilimanjaro is the highest peak in Africa and the largest freestanding mountain in the world. Kilimanjaro is a volcano. People who live near its base believed it to be extinct, but signs of activity at its summit crater are proving otherwise. Kilimanjaro is only dormant, quietly biding its time until its next major eruption. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has lived in the shadow of Kilimanjaro for 20 years, but he has never climbed it. That's about to change. Every year, thousands of tourists come to Tanzania to climb Kilimanjaro, no doubt drawn to the glaciers at its peak, the famous snows of Kilimanjaro. Over a decade ago, scientists predicted global warming would melt the glaciers, but they're still there. So now, Jean is climbing it with a mission. He's heading to the summit to see for himself how climate change is affecting the glaciers. Once on top, he will also look for evidence that the volcano's magma chamber is active. Jean's guide is Mount Kilimanjaro veteran Edward Seth. He works for a commercial tour company called Nature Discovery Tours Tanzania.
I started working with this company as a porter before. Now I am a guide, but started as the assistant guide, and now I am a head guide.
He's been working for Nature Discovery for 5 years, been up the mountain over 100 times.
There are 10 different routes up Kilimanjaro. Jean is taking the Umbwe route, which is considered to be the toughest because of its steep ascent, rapid change in altitude, and physical demands. The ascent will take 5 days. They will establish 5 camps along the way, including one at the summit crater at 5,730 meters.
And what's happening now is all the porters are getting the equipment off the vehicle, setting everything out, and behind me is a scale. So every piece of equipment will be weighed, and by that it will be established how many porters we need to take with us on the mountain.
The porters are packing the gear that they'll need over the next week. It's Jean's first altitude climb, and he's surprised at the extent of the expedition for such a small team.
At the moment, we stand at 21 porters. Yeah, do we really need all of these people and all of this stuff? It's incredible.
Yes.
This is obviously much more than just a gentle stroll. You know, looking at everything that's been taken along for us, it seems like it's going to be a far cry from a primitive stay on the mountain. There's mess tents and fancy menus. We are like proper wageni. So we just started the walk, just left Umbwe Gate, and apparently the key to Kilimanjaro is just to take your time, to gradually and slowly acclimatize to the altitude change.
This is a supported climb. Porters carry all the gear, everything the expedition needs for a week. This frees up the clients to give them the best chance of adapting to altitude and reaching the summit. Because of the sheer volume of equipment and the challenges of the climb, there are porters whose sole job is to support the other porters. The climb will take a total of 7 days, 5 days up, 2 days back down. There are no really easy days on a climb that moves to altitude this quickly. Today's first hike will see a gain of over 1,200 meters in altitude. Kilimanjaro has 5 climatic zones. the most found anywhere in the world in one single place. They start from the savanna at its base, through rainforest and giant heather. At about 4,000 meters, the system changes again into an alpine desert. And then finally, Arctic conditions at the summit. Jean's first day has been spent trekking through the rainforest that covers the lower slopes. This rainforest gets 1 to 2 meters of rain a year. The rainforest has an abundance of wildlife, but the vegetation is so dense that it's hard to see what's there.
Just found some Sykes monkeys or blue monkeys up in the trees here. There's also a group of colobus with them. These are typical monkeys that you find in these montane forests, especially in these East African volcanoes. They mainly feed off leaves and then berries and things that you get here, but they're generally leaf eaters. Classic to the colobus monkeys, they've only got 4 fingers to aid them in moving through the trees very quickly, where the Sykes monkeys are more of your typical primates, where they have a hand as humans. Something that's interesting about these colobus monkeys are that their babies are completely white, and the theory behind that is that they are quite clumsy because they are missing a thumb. And it's very easy for them to drop the babies, so by being white, they tend to see them much easier. And then, of course, when they do drop them, they can see them lying down in a very dark leaf cover. You can see a Sykes monkey through there. They are kind of scuttling away. You can hear some very high-pitched, almost bird-like warning calls. To them, we are obviously a predator. I think their real predator in here is more than likely leopards, but their number one predator would be crowned eagles.
It doesn't take Jean long to discover why this Umwe route is considered Kilimanjaro's most challenging.
We're just about to walk into our first camp. So apparently this was the toughest day of them all, a very serious climb. It was at least 7 hours of hiking and it was pretty steep, I suppose. We are going up Kilimanjaro, aren't we? Some of the porters are already ahead, setting up camp. According to Edward, this is their least favorite route. And I can completely understand that, carrying everything they are carrying.
What Jean does not know is today is the longest day and not the hardest. Each day will get progressively harder. After 7 hours of hiking, they've arrived at Camp 1, their home for the night.
Good job. 9,500 feet.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Good, good. Day 1, done and dusted. Covered a lot of ground and up in a beautiful forest camp. Moss and lichen hanging off the trees, mist moved in, and it's actually not so cold, just really stunning. The crew and the porters are setting up camp at the moment, and I'm ready for a nice warm cup of chai.
Wildlife expert Jean du Plessis is climbing Africa's highest mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro. Rising 6,000 meters above the savanna, Kilimanjaro is Africa's highest mountain.
Very serious climb. We are going up Kilimanjaro, aren't we?
This is Jean's first time up the mountain. He's led by veteran Kilimanjaro guide Edward Seth, who works for Nature Discovery Tours.
According to Edward, this is the porter's least favorite route.
As the sun rises, Jean prepares for the challenging day ahead.
This is morning of day 2. It's a beautiful morning. The sun is out. There's no clouds. I think it's going to be a fantastic hike. The crew here behind me is packing up and they will set off soon. It's a short but very intense day into Baranco camp. According to Edward, about 4 hours, but extremely steep.
It's not just a steep climb. Today's route is also the beginning of Jean's biggest challenge, acclimatizing to the altitude. Baranco camp is at 4,000 meters. The porters have done this many times and can move at a faster pace and will go ahead. Edward will keep Jean moving at a slower pace, so he has time to adjust to the lower oxygen level. The bonus is that Jean will have time to stop and explore the natural beauty of the mountain's diverse landscapes. Today's route will take them out of the rainforest and into the next of Kilimanjaro's 5 ecosystems, the moorlands. Jean is traveling through the tail end of the rainforest, which offers a lot to investigate. With upwards of 2 meters of annual rainfall, this rainforest is a dense and biologically diverse landscape.
We have some moss and lichen hanging off the trees everywhere around us. This is also commonly referred to as old man's beard. The trees everywhere here are covered with this, and it's completely reliant on the mist that comes in here. It captured the water drops and it would hold that, and slowly during the day would drip down, providing a constant source of water for these plants during a day.
Because of the steep terrain of this route, the surroundings change quickly. The thick rainforest canopy begins to thin out, allowing more light to penetrate the floor. As they transition into the moorland, giant heather rises above the thick carpets of moss that covers the ground. The moss is a perfect habitat for some of the mountain's smaller creatures.
So I just came across this chameleon. It seems to me like a young, flappet-necked chameleon. And what's interesting is that it's very dark, much darker than chameleons you would find at lower altitudes. And that's clearly to absorb maximum heat in these colder climates. Of course, another reason might be that it is displaying warning coloring because I picked it up. It's fluctuating between black and yellow. And the yellow is clearly to aid in camouflage because it's living on this heather, and that will help him to blend in much easier. There we go.
The majority of climbing routes on Kilimanjaro rise gradually through the rainforest, which lets climbers ease into the higher altitudes. But the tough Ombwe route is relentless. It has no undulation to give relief to climbers, but continues straight up.
They said yesterday was the hardest day. This has been pretty much a straight up climb from camp this morning, and according to our guides, it's pretty much like this all the way into our campsite.
So far, the thick rainforest canopy has blocked the view of the summit. But as the group climbs, the heather stops abruptly, and Jean gets his first glimpse of Mount Kilimanjaro. They are now out of the rainforest and are entering Kilimanjaro's third ecosystem, the moorlands. Jean, who knows the Serengeti and all its wildlife well, is seeing this landscape for the first time.
We just walked out of the forest and suddenly started to go into this moorland zone and immediately walked into this giant groundsel forest. It's incredible. It's my first time to see these plants. It's like walking into the kind of alien world. This is a type of tree that one finds on most of these large African volcanoes, similar mountains like Mount Kenya, the Ruwenzori's, Mount Meru, all at this altitude will find this tree. These groundsels are extremely well adapted for these cold climates. You can see they've got furry stems, obviously insulating them a bit, but the best insulation is down here. These groundsels have all of these dead leaves to insulate the inner tree, protecting it against these extreme cold weather. Also on these moorland zones, you find a large variety of specifically adapted flowers and grasses. There's a lot of these alpine grasses, and these flowers are hard and papery to make them survive these extreme windy and cold conditions that's very frequent on these slopes.
They have been climbing for just over 4 hours and are now at the Baranco Valley. This is where they will make camp tonight. From here, they will have a clear view of the main peak of Kilimanjaro.
We're just about to walk into our camp for tonight. This last stretch has been really nice and easy. And it's a beautiful day, sunny, about 5-6 hours on the trail, and a really much different environment.
People come from all over the world to see the snows of Kilimanjaro at the top of Africa's tallest peak. A decade ago, scientists predicted that the glaciers would be gone by now because of climate change. But Kilimanjaro's famed glaciers are still there. Wildlife expert Jean du Plessis and nature discovery guide Edward Seth are climbing to Kilimanjaro's summit.
This has been pretty much a straight up climb.
A 5-day trek that will take them to see just how far the glaciers have retreated over the past decade. It's day 2 of this week-long trek, and they have just arrived at their camp in the Baranco Valley, where they finally have a clear view of Kilimanjaro's peak.
Just arrived into the camp for today, Baranco Camp. Incredible views up into Arrow Glacier. Can easily spot our trail of tomorrow. Going up here, seems like it's going to be a bit of a scramble for the first 2 hours. There's just been an avalanche up there. All of the white we see up here is pretty much ice and glaciers. So this is the hottest time of the day, and these glaciers start to melt, and there's a lot of buildup of water in it. And it must have been just a sudden break of that. The ice is melting, and a lot of water keeps on gushing down, and it must have just broken down the bottom piece of that glacier, and it just came gushing down a valley there. Initially I thought it was thunder, but then there was just this kind of dust of ice.
It's not clear whether this glacial burst is a sign of their retreat. Jean hopes he'll get a clearer picture when he reaches the summit. As the climb progresses, Jean realizes why they need so many porters. Everything down to the kitchen needs to be carried up the mountain.
Hello, we are in the kitchen, just preparing the dinner here. So what we use to prepare is we use the gas tank to cook dinner. As you know that within the national park nowadays, like Kilimanjaro, we are not allowed to use to cook by using firewood. So the cook here preparing the dinner, as you see there. So they are preparing beef stir fried, and then peanut stew. And then, yeah, it's peanut sauce, yeah. And then there you can see spinach soup. Yeah, spinach soup and rice too. So it's really very, very delicious food that you enjoy.
Well, I had a very good night. I slept well, and then John is doing fine too, and he's very strong today. And then I hope you are going to make to the summit. But I can't promise about the altitude, but I hope you will be fine.
It's morning of day 3 and the crew is starting to pack up camp. It's heating up very quickly. It was freezing cold this morning. Today's walk starts with a really intense climb up the Baranco Wall. It's about 2 hours, and as I'm looking out into the distance, I can see this trail of climbers going up. So we'll be coming in behind most of the porters of some of the other camps.
The Umbwe route is particularly challenging for the porters. Scattered throughout the climb are technical sections that make carrying loads difficult. Today's challenge is the Baranco Wall, a steep, nearly vertical section up the side of one of Kilimanjaro's lava flows. At Baranco, the Umbwe route merges with one of the more commercial climbing routes.
There's a bit of a traffic jam here. No idea how these guys get these loads up through these tiny little valleys and cracks. It's quite humbling. There's one way to do it, is with a bit of music. There we go.
The climbers have to scramble across narrow ledges and up steep crags. The porters have to do this while carrying their packs of equipment. Each hand and foot placement requires precision. There is no room for error. A miss will send climbers down a sheer drop into the Baranco Valley.
Health and safety will improve, but it's a nice climb.
This is Jean's first Kilimanjaro climb, and he's doing well.
We are about 3/4 of the way up the Baranco Wall at 13,200 feet. Amazing climb this morning, coming almost straight up this wall. Certainly some of the steepest parts of this route so far had to use hands and feet. Not quite technical, but close to. Behind me, incredible valley, this Baranco Valley, which is a glacier valley. About 100 years ago, this must have been filled with ice, about 100 feet deep, where today the ice only starts still a little bit higher.
At one time, the edges of the glaciers were below 4,500 meters. Now, it's not clear whether the retreat of the glaciers is a natural phenomenon or whether it's caused by human activity and climate change. Today's climb is not about gaining elevation, it's about acclimatizing to the altitude. At Kilimanjaro's summit, the human body has only 50% of the oxygen it has at sea level, so it has to work twice as hard. As it adapts to the thin air, the body starts producing more white blood cells, increasing the amount of oxygen in the blood supply. Now they are heading into the Karonga Valley, where they face their next challenge before heading into Camp 3.
This is the Karonga Valley, and this is our last obstacle before we get into Karonga camp. It's a very steep climb up into camp, but then it's the end of the day where we can kind of start the acclimatization process, because tomorrow night is at the same altitude again to get ready before we go into Crater Camp.
As an experienced walking guide, it's a point of pride for Jean to stay within striking distance of the porters. But in spite of his best efforts today, the challenges of being at altitude are slowing him down. The porters have already set up camp. Wildlife expert Jean du Plessis has lived in the shadow of Mount Kilimanjaro for more than 20 years and is climbing it for the first time. Along with nature discovery guide Edward Seth, Jean wants to look at the effects that climate change is having on the mountain's famous glaciers. It's day 4 of this challenging hike. Jean is at an altitude of 4,500 meters. He is within 24 hours of the summit. Now, with each gain in elevation, the risk of altitude sickness increases. The physical demands on the mountain are challenging enough so that most climbers hire an experienced guide and professional porters to do the heavy lifting.
Edward is an amazing young guy doing these climbs back to back, you know, doing an 8-day climb, come back, repack, go up again. You must be a very strong, stable human being to go up and always take fairly large groups of guests onto high mountains and extreme weather conditions where everyone is going to feel bad. So besides being a very fit and able person to do it, you know, he also is your psychologist up there, and he's your friend, and he's your motivator, you know. And it's wonderful to see how these Tanzanian mountain guides can be all of that and almost put their own needs aside and channel all of their energy into their guests and making sure that they have not only reached the summit, but they have a great time doing that. And Edward is a prime example of one of these guides just with all of those qualities.
Porters carry loads of supplies up the mountain, set up the camps, and cook the meals. A demanding job in an incredibly tough environment.
Okay. So we are going to take it and then measure it. Yeah.
20 on the dot.
Yeah.
So yeah, 20 kilograms. It's an incredible load to lug up Kilimanjaro. You know, besides the going up and down in the physical terrain, you are also operating at a really high altitude. For me, it's hard simply just walking up these hills. I can't imagine what it's like for the porters to be carrying 20 kilograms on their heads and on their necks, including their personal gear as well. So just in order for me to understand a little bit better, I'm going to try and carry this for a while. So let's give it a shot. 20. Okay, you ready? Okay, off we go.
Each porter will do between 1 and 3 trips a month. Working as a porter is the first step to becoming a mountain guide like Edward. After a couple of 100 meters at altitude, Jean is in some difficulty.
No, I'm not going to carry that thing. No, that was no joke. It's extremely hard carrying something like that. First of all, in an uncomfortable position, either on your head or on your neck, going up this hill with no oxygen. One needs to be hugely respectful to these porters carrying these massive loads up here. Most of the guides that guide on the mountain all started as porters, and this seems to be like that little initiation that anyone that wants to go somewhere on the mountain needs to go through.
Zaina, 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 mtoto wa mama, Zaina, anapenda kitu, Zaina, Zaina, yo 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 yo, Zaina, 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 wageni, wageni, wanapenda nguvu, Zaina, ya kupanda huku, Zaina, oh 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 oh, Zaina, oh 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 oh, Zaina, Zaina, Zaina.
This is where an experienced guide is essential. This is Jean's first climb, his first time at this altitude, and Edward is keeping a close eye on him, watching for any signs of altitude sickness. Altitude sickness is a serious condition that can affect climbers regardless of their fitness level. It can cause fluid to build in the climber's lungs or swelling in the brain. Both conditions can be fatal. Early signs range from nausea to mental confusion. If Jean starts to show any of these warning signs, his climb will be over. The only cure is a rapid descent to a lower altitude.
Just arriving in our final camp before the summit attempt tomorrow morning. This camp is sitting at 15,200 feet, and I'm clearly a little bit out of breath. It was a steep climb into camp. There's not much in terms of vegetation around here. I don't think anything grows. So we'll spend the afternoon here just to acclimatize and get ready for tomorrow.
It's at this altitude that the experience of the outfitting company is important. One of the porters has been carrying a pack that has a state-of-the-art emergency medical kit.
So we have a hyperbaric chamber here. It works the same as the oxygen, you know. You can use this oxygen or hyperbaric chamber. Why? In case someone is suffering with high altitude sickness, like pulmonary edema or cerebral edema.
Do you carry them in this?
Yeah, okay. We carry them.
We are at 15,200 feet right now, and tomorrow morning we'll be going up to just under 20,000 feet. That's an incredible climb, and I mean, it's a huge misconception that Kilimanjaro is not a dangerous mountain. It's massively dangerous, and the dangerous day is tomorrow. Altitude sickness can hit you irrelevant of how fit you are. It can hit anyone irrespective, and I've got no idea how I will react at those high altitudes tomorrow, so just as well we have this bag with us.
At 5,000 meters, we are now in Kilimanjaro's alpine zone. It's a stark contrast to the verdant rainforest that started out the trek. Even in this barren wasteland that is difficult for humans, there is wildlife.
So by far the most common bird species found in these high altitude camps are these white-naped ravens. They are all over the place, and it's not common to find these ravens in huge congregations. Generally one would find them just in a breeding pair, and they would live in that monogamous breeding pair throughout the breeding season. These straight cliffs and harsh environment is an ideal place for these ravens to nest, and one would generally find that a pair would look for a ledge. There they will find some sticks and grass and fur and things, and make a soft bed inside where they will lay their eggs. Pretty much the main reason these ravens are in these campsites are because that they are scavengers. Besides eating small lizards and mice, and they will even scavenge off dead carcasses. The main food source in these stark environments must certainly be leftover food from these hikers.
They are now within a day's walk of the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. As well, Jean is hoping to take a detour and hike to the volcanic crater to look for fumaroles. Fumaroles are heat and volcanic gas outlets in the ground that indicate the mountain still contains an active magma chamber just below the summit. Jean's ascent has been rapid, just 4 days, and so the effects of the altitude are really pronounced. Now the climb becomes a mental game. Jean knows that tomorrow each step will be a gain in altitude, and the climb will get harder.
It is very high, and I've never been that high.
Okay.
He's been handling it well so far, but that's no prediction that he will continue to handle the thin air well.
Let's check oxygen saturation and the heart rate, okay? Yeah, oxygen is 80, heart rate is 83. Yeah, that's really good.
79. 80, back to 80. Okay, 80 is good.
The cold is another physical stress for Jean. As a South African, he is not used to frigid temperatures as low as -20.
We'll head out of camp around 6 o'clock, and incredible sunset we just had, kind of going down behind Kilimanjaro with this mist coming and going. Just really, really scenic. We thought for most of the day that we're not going to see the mountain. It was very misty since about 11 o'clock this morning. But yeah, stunning. And I'm really sitting here just contemplating my doom for tomorrow.
Mount Kilimanjaro is almost 6,000 meters. It's Africa's highest peak. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has nearly completed his first climb. He's come to see for himself how global warming is affecting the famous glaciers at the top of Kilimanjaro. And he's hoping to make an extra trip to the volcanic crater to look for evidence that proves that Kilimanjaro has an active magma chamber. Jean is climbing with veteran guide Edward Seth. In this thin air, Seth is watching carefully to make sure that Jean is not suffering from the beginnings of altitude sickness, which can be fatal.
So everyone is up. It's very cold, and the sun is just about to rise. And we're going to start this track now. We expect about 3 to 4 hours up to the summit. It's beautiful up there. I can already see the sun catching the summit there. Yeah, it's going to be a great day. Can't wait.
Day 5 of the climb, and the conditions are beautiful. Cold, but clear. There's a lot to accomplish on the summit, so they push a steady pace. The plan has been to make a detour at this point to the summit crater to search for volcanic fumaroles. That round trip will add 4 hours to their day, so they need to keep moving.
So this whole morning we've been walking on an ancient lava flow. It's interesting walking up this mountain where you can see how these different lava flows over the centuries built this enormous volcano. And it always is staggering to me that this was really at some point down at ground level, and over the millennia, with these various eruptions and these millions of tons of lava that built the stratovolcano to be the size what Kilimanjaro is now. So I thought we would be at least halfway, but apparently we're only a quarter of the way. So going at a steady pace, feeling good. Yeah.
After 4 hours of climbing, Jean is approaching the crater rim. It's not the summit, but it ends the toughest part of the climb. From here, the summit is just 45 minutes away. If they are going to make their trip to the volcanic crater, this is where they'll make that trip.
Arrival up at Stella Point was quite epic. It's a very steep hike that last day, and Stella Point is the first time as you come up the side of Kilimanjaro and you kind of reach the rim and you are now looking into the crater. And it's a hard hike, especially at those altitudes. We had fairly good weather all the way up, and we never really saw snow or ice up until about an hour before we reached Stella Point, and I thought that was just beautiful to see these ice layers coming down. Looking into the crater with those glaciers there, it was a really nice, beautiful sight.
The top of Kilimanjaro is not a traditional mountain peak. It's actually a broad crater, several kilometers across, with a large inner crater at its center. For a long time, the conventional wisdom was that Kilimanjaro was extinct. But recent explorations have revealed that Kilimanjaro has active fumaroles near the summit crater. The pair had planned to take a detour to Kilimanjaro's volcanic crater to see whether there is evidence of activity. But this far above sea level, the human body has to work twice as hard to do most normal things. And Jean has realized his limitations. He doesn't think he can make the 4-hour round trip to the crater and make the summit. After almost a week of climbing the mountain, Jean has to make a choice.
When I reached Stellar Point, there was a decision to be made, and I decided to rather wait and conserve my energy for the summit attempt.
Jean will stay with the assistant guide, while Edward, who is much better acclimatized, will explore the crater on his own. Up until now, they've had fantastic weather. But within a half an hour, a blinding ice storm moves in, and Edward gets caught in the middle of it. Storms on Kilimanjaro can end as quickly as they start, so Edward continues on to the crater.
It's a very, very bad storm that we are not able to see down to this rim. But we are on the top of the rim now. But as you see, the weather is really, really amazing, very bad. Due to this really bad weather storm, we have to go back to Stellar Point to see John there.
Yeah, it's kind of good that in the end I didn't go to the crater because poor Edward was caught in a massive ice storm up there and he couldn't see more than a few feet in front of him. So he didn't get to see much of the crater either. It also shows you the extreme climates of this mountain. I mean, being the highest freestanding mountain in the world, it's so exposed to the elements, and there's no mountain ranges on the sides of it that blocks the wind all the way from the Indian Ocean. You have got these winds battering this mountain, and it changes literally in minutes. And it's such pockets of intense weather where I could sit, I mean, almost less than a kilometer away from them, and they could be in the worst possible weather conditions, and I was fairly sheltered.
After almost a week climbing the mountain, Jean sees the snows of Kilimanjaro.
Here we go. Last few steps to the roof of Africa.
It's day 5 on Mount Kilimanjaro, and head mountain guide Edward Seth has abandoned his effort to explore the volcano's summit crater after a freak ice storm blew in. He is now back with Jean, and the weather has cleared. The small group will investigate Kilimanjaro's glaciers before pushing on to the summit.
I'm right on the rim now, making my way round to Uhuru Peak. And here behind me is part of the famous snows of Kilimanjaro. These are the glaciers that unfortunately every year is becoming smaller and smaller. Even Edu here is saying last year the snow and the ice extended way lower down the slopes of Kilimanjaro. And now today when we walked up, only just as we were reaching Stellar Point, that we start to walk in between ice.
Today they are more than 500 meters away and getting noticeably further away each year. With the reduced snowpack, the glacier will shrink at an even greater rate. Inside the crater, the glaciers have almost entirely disappeared. In 10 to 20 years, they will be completely gone. Although scientists who predicted their demise were off by 10 to 20 years, it is evident that the famed snows of Kilimanjaro's days are numbered. Jean and Edward push on towards the summit.
Here we go. Last few steps to the roof of Africa.
After just 5 days of climbing, Jean stands on top of Kilimanjaro.
You are now at the Uhuru Peak.
Looking down from the peak of Kilimanjaro gives them a greater understanding of what the Serengeti must have looked like 2 million years ago. The plains were built on the ashes of Ngorongoro after a massive eruption that destroyed it, but created the landscape that has nurtured life for 2 million years. And it is possible that one day, Kilimanjaro will roar to life again in a major eruption that will destroy itself, creating a new crater like Ngorongoro and building a rich new ecosystem.
Kilimanjaro for me was a really nice experience after living in Tanzania for so many years, doing it for the first time. It was scenically just so incredibly beautiful going up through those forests, and just see how the vegetation changed through the altitude, and being next to those glaciers and just seeing how magnificent they are. It was a really nice thing for me to do, certainly.
Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis explores the Serengeti's link to humans' distant past.
This area is often referred to as the cradle of mankind.
From there, he visits our closest living relatives.
It's always incredible to see chimpanzees. They're so close to ourselves. They just view us as another primate species that live side by side.
And he visits Serengeti's nomadic people, the Maasai.
Do you think we can maybe go visit your village? Definitely be born in this culture to appreciate that.
This is the Greater Serengeti in Tanzania. It's one of the most biologically diverse places on the planet. It's home to over 70 species of mammals, and it's the site of the wildebeest migration, the largest mass movement of animals on Earth. But there's more to the Serengeti than its wildlife. It's also one of the most important paleoanthropological sites in the world. On the southern Serengeti Plains in Olduvai Gorge, famed paleontologists Lewis and Mary Leakey made some of their most important fossil discoveries, discoveries that have been central to our understanding of early human origins and evolution.
I'm standing on the edge of Olduvai Gorge, which is a really prominent site within the Great Rift Valley. This area is often referred to as the cradle of mankind because the Leakeys discovered two very prominent skulls here.
Those skulls of Zinjanthropus and Homo habilis date back to about 2 million years.
The reason Olduvai Gorge is so unique is the fact that this used to be a massive lake a couple of million years ago, where these hunter-gatherers or early hominids formed homesteads. It was the perfect environment to live close to a food source. What's really interesting is the fact that Homo habilis, or the handyman, was discovered not more than 20 meters from Australopithecus, living side by side during the same time era. It might sound strange to have two ape-like species living close together like that, but today is no different. Further south in the Great Rift Valley are apes still living. And in other areas in Africa, there are species such as bonobos and gorillas, all living same as us humans in the Great Rift Valley.
Tanzania has several populations of chimpanzees. The most well-known is in Gombe National Park, where Jane Goodall did her famous studies. But the most significant population is actually further south, in Tanzania's Mahale Mountains.
Just arrived onto Mahale airstrip and we getting to an old dhow that's going to take us into the national parks. This is one of those unique parks where there's no roads.
Jean wants to see Mahale's wild chimpanzees close up, where he can observe their behavior. And to do that, he's headed to Greystoke, a lodge on the shores of Lake Tanganyika that is only reachable by boat.
I'm on Lake Tanganyika, which is just one of the most spectacular lakes I've ever seen. The largest body of unpolluted fresh water on the planet. Behind me is Mahale Mountain National Park, and this is one of the few parks where one can find viable populations of chimpanzees. On this side of the lake are very much two chimp populations referred to as the M group and the K group, where in the 80s, the M group pretty much overthrew and almost completely demolished the K group. In modern day, the K group is starting to come back, but it's a new population of chimpanzees that's very skittish and hard to see.
It's estimated that the entire park has between 700 and 1,000 chimpanzees. Mahale Mountains National Park is open to tourists, but the lodges are all small occupancy. That, along with the fact that the area is remote and hard to get to, keeps it from being too overrun by tourists. And in a fragile ecosystem, that's a good thing.
Here we are arriving at camp. It's always a very impressive sight.
Jeff and Carrie, the managers at Greystoke, along with the staff and resident Pelican, come out to greet Jean. Jean settles down in camp for the night. They will begin trekking in the morning.
It's another really hard day in the office.
The chimpanzees live in the mountains around Greystoke. Researchers had been studying them for decades, so they're habituated to humans. This means Jean should be able to sit and observe them. But first, he has to find them. The home range of M Group spans a very large area. This is mountainous terrain. For Jean, it will mean a tough, steep hike through dense bush. Jean's guide is Mwiga Mambo, head guide and primate expert at Greystoke. Mwiga is the second generation in his family to work with the chimps. His father worked on a research project in Mahale.
This is our first morning and we're about to head off into the forest to see if we can find these chimps. What can we expect this time of year? Is it going to be easy, hard? What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard walking.
Really?
Honestly. Very hard walking.
Okay.
With limited time, Jean is keen to get started. The chimps are wild animals and aren't on his schedule.
There's still no update from the trackers in terms of locating the chimpanzees this morning, but instead of sitting here on the beach, we're heading off into the forest to go and explore the lower regions of the forest.
The chimps are often easily found in the low-lying areas around the camp.
Yeah. Just keep on walking.
But a recent shift in weather has sent the chimps higher up into the mountains in search of food. This means some serious climbing ahead for Jean, with no guarantees. The chimps can get to areas that are inaccessible to humans. So the trio begins to head into the forest and up the mountain.
What's this?
Strychnos inacua.
They must clearly eat this inside part that is soft and smelling, very citrus-like.
Chimpanzees, they have canine, and then they have strong jaw.
Okay, so they can break it.
Yeah, they can break it.
What can we expect? Is it going to be easy, hard?
Yeah, it's hard walking.
Really?
Honestly.
Jean du Plessis is in the Mahale Mountains, where he and head Greystoke guide, Mwiga Mambo, are on a quest to observe the social life of the chimpanzee. were biologically cousins to chimps and gorillas and share 98% of the same genetic makeup. What separates us from our hairy relatives is our large brains, our capacity for language, and the ability to create and use complex tools.
Is this a termite mount?
Yes.
I know in Gombe, with Jane Goodall's project, they discovered that they fish for termites with sticks. Do they do the same here?
Now, here they didn't fish from termite mound, but they fish from the trees. There is an ant called carpenter ants. They use tools too.
So here they don't use those sticks to fish for termites. What's quite fascinating is that it's all learned behavior. Obviously some chimp in Gombe did that by accident and there was a termite on, and that's how they learned it. And here in Mahali, maybe one of them was playing around with a stick in a tree and caught a carpenter ant. So it's more a matter of a learned behavior that's brought over from generation to generation, and by chance it haven't happened here that they are fishing for termite.
Science has learned a lot from studying chimp behavior. Researchers and scientists have discovered medical treatments for diseases like malaria, diarrhea, and even anti-tumor medication that can be used by humans.
We've been hiking now for most of the morning. The trackers came out at 7 o'clock this morning to try and find the chimpanzees. But this time of year, they're high up in the mountains and in the valleys because that's where their only viable food source will be.
Finally, after several hours of hiking, Jean makes his first sighting.
It's 1 o'clock now and we just came across a group of females and infants. I'm wearing this face mask because a few years ago there was a flu virus that was introduced to this group of chimpanzees, and there was a dramatic decrease in chimpanzee numbers here in Mahali. So as a precaution, all guests coming into contact with chimps must wear these face masks at all times. Just down from me is two females sitting with an infant that's younger than a year. One can see they're younger than a year because they've got this little fluff of white on their backsides. It's always incredible to see chimpanzees. They're just so close to ourselves. They're having a proper game here. The young ones chasing each other. So what was all that about?
That happened is two mothers fighting because of their children.
It's pretty much just like humans with
Yes.
two kids fighting and then the mothers end up fighting.
Exactly.
Yes.
Although not overly disturbed by the presence of humans, the mothers are understandably protective.
And it seems like they're still having a little bit of squabbles as they move up the hill, so we're just going to try and stay behind them.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to keep up with them. It's very easy for them, obviously, moving through this undergrowth. It's extremely hard for us. This time of day is when they all kind of pass out a bit and take it easy.
Although this group of females is off on their own, chimp society has both a patriarchy and a hierarchy. To get a fuller picture of their social structure, Jean will need to find the males.
Who's now number one? Alofu?
Number one is Primus, and then he was challenged alpha male on that time, calling Pim, and then Orion went up to be number three. So he needed to support Alofu to take over to resume his position. Pim gets scared of him. So Pim, he was needed support from Primus, number three. Primus, he was challenged Alofu and then a lot get scared him. He disappeared with the one female calling Effie.
It's very complicated. There's a big power struggle going on.
It's amazing.
Seems like you are part of these politics.
Yes,
It's like a soap opera for you.
Yeah.
These females we've been tracking the whole day are part of a much larger group of between 60 and 70 individuals, and hopefully these calls and these little domestic and conflicts within this small group will draw the main group this way, and hopefully those dominant males will come and see what the trouble is here.
The M group of chimps is broken down into several smaller groups. While there are still some males to be seen through the brush, Jean is still looking for the main group and the dominant males.
These kind of calls are totally contact calls because the group is all over this valley. They are communicating with each other, and hopefully some of the ranking males will come and see where these females are, and we might run into them tomorrow. Yeah, it'd also be nice for you to go there and see what's going on, because it seems like it's changing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's getting late, so they call it a day. Mwiga leads Jean back down to Greystoke Lodge. Back at the lodge, the resident pelican is more forthcoming than the male chimpanzees.
This pelican is incredible.
This pelican has become a fixture here, and manager Jeff from Greystoke fills in Jean on his backstory.
So what's the deal with this bird?
Yeah, the bird, he swam in off the lake about 8 months ago. There had been a big storm, and next thing we knew, the bird was swimming ashore and started chatting to our guests.
I mean, there's a bit of a daily routine to this guy.
Yeah, it's quite a relaxed daily routine. He landed on the right beach, that's for sure.
It's nice seeing him out in the kayak with you.
Oh, he loves it. He loves kayaking. He really wants to fish. But as a solo bird, it's a real challenge. I mean, they normally fish as a flock, so they corral the fish, and then they all scoop with their huge pouches, and then they filter the water out, and that's how they feed. But as a solo bird, he doesn't stand a chance.
An isolated pelican in the wild is vulnerable. This one is lucky. Jean hopes some of that luck will rub off on him as he heads into day 2 of his quest. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis is in the remote Mahale Mountains National Park. The park has the largest number of wild chimpanzees in Tanzania. And Jean is hoping he can get close enough to watch the chimp's social structure in action. From his base at Greystoke Lodge, Jean has put himself in the hands of its chief guide and primate expert, Mwiga Mambo. It's day 2, and they've just come across a male and a female. Mwiga IDs him as Darwin, the third-ranked male chimpanzee.
And he and this female climbed up this fig tree, and they are feeding on ficus. It's really hard this time of the year for them to find a viable food source, so they really need to eat when they see food. What they will do is they will pick with their hands and stuff their mouths full of figs, and one by one they would run these figs through their teeth, and that way they don't need their hands for the actual feeding anymore. Darwin is the number 3 ranked male in this group of chimpanzees, and that gives him the authority to take a female away for a couple of days. Well, in his case, he's been away with her now for 3 weeks. She's an estrus. That gives him the opportunity to completely monopolize her and be with her all the time. If they are in a big group, he's going to have to share a female in estrus with some of the other ranked males, especially the males that's ranked higher than him. It's a time of day where they kind of lie down and take a bit of a siesta, but it's also a time for grooming. So he's never joining up with the main group in the last couple of weeks?
No, that's why you can see big group, they're on the mountains. Darwin is here.
Okay.
Mean that he don't like to share.
So what do you think, what's up to Darwin now? Where is he, what's his plans? Does he just kind of go up and down and try and avoid the main group the whole time? So
Yes.
there's no real plan that you think he's after today?
Also, the plan, if you see male doing like that, mean that he needed to be on high rank.
To be able to steal a female like
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yeah, because he won't do that if he's in low rank, like number 7 and like that. He won't do that.
So we're going to leave Darwin.
With Darwin fully occupied by his fig tree and the female, it's time to move on.
We just got news from the trackers that they found the main group. It's quite far from here, high up in the mountains. So we need to take a boat to go around to an easier place to launch from.
We're on the boat now just to go around to the next beach, but I expect this is going to be a very hard hike.
They are there on that hill.
We will start from here to find a trail behind this camp to head up into the hills.
The main group of chimps has been spotted even further up the mountain. Jean and the crew have to start again at beach level, and they have a long, tough climb ahead of them.
So M group is by far the most dominant group in Mahali, and it seems like there's a lot of politics at play inside this M group.
Yeah.
That might make matters a little bit unstable for the rest of the group as well.
The alpha male loses power, mean that if he gets sick, and then others, number 2, he can take that opportunity to hit him badly. Now in charge is Primus, and then I hope Darwin or Orion, he will take over.
Is this kind of behavior everyday type of thing? Are we likely to see?
Anytime can happen.
So we can expect some excitement.
Exactly.
The hike is a tough one, steep, rocky, and they have to go through a lot of brush. But after 2 hours, the hard work pays off.
We just found the main group after a grueling hike up this mountain. And this is Primus, the alpha male, is lying in front of me here.
Primus, the alpha male, is clutching an enviable prize, the carcass of a colobus monkey. It's more than the little ones can resist.
Look. Oh, dropped it. He had a piece of meat which looks like a colobus monkey, a red colobus, and a young infant basically took it from him. That created a bit of a commotion between the infants. Luckily they don't view us as red colobus monkeys. And it was interesting to see the two infants fight down below, up in the trees. And there was a mother sitting down here almost shouting instructions up to them to stop it, stop it, stop it. But eventually she went up and then it got all out of hand. And then suddenly a lawful appeared, who's the second ranking male, to come and sort out all this trouble. It's quite common for chimpanzees to eat meat, and it's kind of a delicacy for them. They really like it, but very hard to obtain because it's generally red colobus monkeys that they would catch, and these monkeys are very nimble up in a higher canopy where obviously chimpanzees struggle to move around so far. So it's a massive team effort and a hunting party that will go out and chase all these colobus high up into the canopy And just with a lot of aggression and movement and shaking of bushes, maybe one of them will fall and they will catch them on the ground.
For now, the excitement seems to be over. Jean du Plessis is on his second day of his quest to find the M group of chimpanzees in the Mahale Mountains National Park. After a difficult hike, Jean and head Greystoke guide Mwiga Mambo have found the core group that includes the ranking males high up in the mountains. And they've located Primus, the alpha male who Mwiga says is also the most unstable.
Who's the most aggressive in the group?
Primus and Orion.
Right.
This guy are crazy. Primus is the alpha male now, and he like fighting a lot. Because he has a bad behavior, most of chimps, they don't like him. That's why you can see he'll use like a force. Yeah, maybe 1 year to come, he will lose his power.
And who do you think will be coming up next?
Could be Darwin, because he did such good things, and Orion.
Who's the oldest chimpanzee in the group?
It's Kalunde. He's
Right.
55 years old. Kalunde, he's kingmaker.
Right.
If he decided to support you, majority of chimps, they're going to listen to him, and then they're going to support.
So who is he supporting now?
Yeah.
Who is he?
Now, he's working with Alof for many times, so seems like he needed to support Alof to resume his position.
And has he been alpha?
Yeah, he was alpha male in 1991 for 1 year only. Yeah.
Why do you hope that Darwin would become alpha?
Yeah, because he has a lot of support also. Even Alofo, he support him. And then a lot of female also, they like him. Yeah, he's peaceful, yeah. But Orion is angry. He want to take over from number one. So when he do that, he convince the female agree, and then he going to those number 3, 4, and 5. When they agree, they're going to try to challenge the alpha male.
Sitting in between a group of ranking males and females in this quiet time, for the time being, where they are grooming each other. It shows respect, it strengthens bonds between individuals. It's quite amazing how you can just sit here. One kind of wonder if they just view us as another primate species that lives side by side to them, and don't have any negative effects on them.
After spending time with the chimps, it's time for Jean to move on. But all the difficult hiking has paid off. Jean's had a chance to observe the chimps' dynamic social structure up close. It's always in constant change as lower-ranking males vie to move up in the hierarchy. Perhaps not so different from the way human societies work. Now Jean heads back to the greater Serengeti. He's heading to Lake Natron in the Great Rift Valley. Here in the shadow of the sacred Oldonyo Lengai volcano is the center of the Maasai culture. The Serengeti Plains is known for its relatively undisturbed ecosystem, its rich wildlife, and the wildebeest migration. But it is also one of the key places where our species, Homo sapiens, evolved. We know that hominids have lived in the Serengeti for a long time, but a recent discovery on the shores of Lake Natron is helping rewrite the story of modern humans.
Yeah, this looks like an adult, maybe a bit smaller.
Yeah, this is for baby.
Yeah, we've got a few sets of footprints here. It seems like these people were walking from over there, going down this way. And they were all walking barefoot. In southern Serengeti, or more in the Ngorongoro conservation area, there's another set of footprints. Those are called the footprints of Loitole. That's the oldest proof of walking on two legs, and that humanoid was called Homo erectus.
These footprints provide a link to humanity's distant past, but the area around Lake Natron and the eastern side of the Serengeti is currently home to the Maasai.
This series of footprints are referred to as the Ngorongoro footprints, and it's very interesting because it's the oldest footprints of Homo sapiens in East Africa, dating back to 120,000 years. The significance of these footprints are that it's a clear indication that modern-day Homo sapiens lived in this area for a very long time, even a little bit longer than what was originally thought.
The Maasai settled in the Serengeti around the 15th century and developed a very distinct culture that they have held on to in spite of pressures from the modern world. Little has changed in their lifestyle or culture in that time. They are still a tribe of semi-nomadic pastoralists. There are two things that define life for the Maasai: their cattle and their spiritual beliefs. The Maasai believe in a single God who influences their daily life. And there are a number of places around the greater Serengeti that they consider sacred. The most sacred is Oldonyo Lengai, an active volcano that the Maasai believe is their god.
Oldonyo Lengai is very famous. 2 years ago, we was have really trouble with dry season. Many cattle die around here, also Kenya. So I saw Maasai from Kenya. They are joining with a Maasai old man or old woman from in this place. And they join together and they make a safari. I mean, about 2 days, they went to the top.
And then it started raining.
Yeah, I mean, it was about after that, few months coming, it's raining, and we have a big rain right now.
Yes. According to Peter, some of these families actually packed up and they left the area altogether in fear of bigger eruptions. So do you think people were doing something wrong to make the god angry?
Yeah, it's a big eruption until people, they move from the same place to another place.
Where did the ash go? Did it
goes to Ngorongoro direction?
The ash from Lengai gets picked up by the wind. It's this nutrient-rich ash from these volcanoes that constantly replenishes the Serengeti. In one area, the ash is collected into a sand dune. It is one of the Maasai's sacred sites.
I'm heading to the Shifting Sands, which is one of very few sacred places to the Maasai tribe. And it's out here on extremely barren terrain. The area I'm in is inside the Ngorongoro conservation area. The Maasai's lived here for a couple of 100 years. It's a great example of where people and wildlife can live side by side. The Maasai traditionally are not hunters, so they are a prime example of a tribe that can live in harmony with wildlife. There's quite a few Maasai sheep herds around.
Jean arrives at the Maasai sacred site and finds a welcoming committee.
There's different kind of greetings for men and women in Maasai, or the language is called Ma. And you say different things when you greet a woman or a younger woman, older woman, or different age set of male as well. No takwenya, wala takoko.
Maasai culture is patriarchal and sharply divided along gender lines. The Maasai take Jean to see the sacred sand dune.
The sand dune was created by a volcanic eruption out of Oldonyo Lengai
that's off in that direction, and it's now been moving downwind in approximately 25 meters every year. There's definitely some magnetic qualities to the sand that keeps it sticking together. Here you can see the sand falling over on itself. And this is essentially just a normal sand dune made up out of volcanic ash that have some magnetic qualities that kind of keep it together a little bit. And it just keeps on falling over on itself like this. It's pretty cool. These shifting sands have some religious value to the Maasai tribe, and it's believed that if a woman cannot conceive, that they need to come and sleep in this vortex, and that will help them to become pregnant.
The women are raised to become wives and mothers, and the men are Maasai warriors. These roles have been in place since the Maasai settled here in the 15th century. Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis is at Lake Natron in the Great Rift Valley. It's the cultural center of the Maasai people.
I'm at the Wildland Safaris Lake Natron camp, and this is Mwinga, who's going to be my Maasai guide. These cows are now being taken out into the field by the young boys called Lioni, where they will go to pastures and just be out there for the whole day and be laid back around 6 o'clock in the evening.
The Maasai men are warriors, called Morani.
I always wonder what is the responsibility of the Morani, because 50 years ago there was a lot more trouble with maybe lions and other tribes and things like that, and then the Morani were like the warriors and they were protecting the tribe. So, but today there's not so much trouble with warfare, and you don't need to go and catch and steal cows. So what does the Morani do these days?
The function of Moran now to do it is only to look for the peace and love for the community, and also to migrate with cow to the somewhere which have the enough grass or enough food and enough water.
But I find that very interesting what you say. Is like now the new function of them is to make sure that there's peace and love in the community. Yeah. But of course, in the same way, it's also protecting the culture. So yeah, I think that's great. This enclosure here seems to where they are keeping the goats at night. The baby goats. What's interesting is that it's a mini representation of how the main Maasai houses are being constructed, where they take the branches from a cordia tree and then packing it with dung all the way up the walls and even on the inside, and then they will smoothen it out with mud on the outside to give it the nice red ochre type of look. Besides all the modern technology that surround the Maasai tribe, they still choose to live in these very traditional houses and a very traditional lifestyle. And I mean, you might have a watch and a cell phone, but you know, you still that's one of the things that I always admire about Maasai, is they're clung onto this culture. It's really nice.
In spite of their reputation as warriors, the Maasai are not hunters. Their traditional diet includes meat from the animals they raise. They also drink raw cow blood and milk.
The Morani are going to draw some blood from a cow's neck, and these are special tools that they use to kind of get the blood out. It's like an arrow that they shoot in. Okay. Is that's still really a big part of the Maasai diet?
Yep. Of course,
okay. Sure. A major part, you think?
Yep.
Kali. Yeah. That's very sharp. There's the, looks like a young one. Is it?
Yes, young one.
There's a little kid with the calabash. Yeah. That's what they carry the blood in.
Yeah.
So how much blood do you take then, Wingan?
We don't take much.
Okay. They're now going to take this calabash and get some fresh milk in there. So if you don't stir it, it goes hard, it goes solid. Oh boy. You definitely need to be born in this culture to appreciate that.
Lactose and protein intolerant.
How is it?
That's like coffee.
It's like coffee. Sure.
I don't see my name on here.
No.
Trying getting this to Starbucks. Like
Jean is heading to the Ngorongoro Crater Highlands, where Mizigio Tented Camp works with the local Maasai to give tourists some insight into their traditions. The Maasai's semi-nomadic lifestyle allows their livestock to thrive despite the relatively dry climate. But the landscape provides other economic opportunities as well.
The traditional role of the warriors used to be to enrich the tribe, and that used to take on the form of going at war with your neighboring clans and stealing their cows. And in these modern days, that's obviously frowned upon a little bit. So the more modern way to do that is to get cash from tourists, and it's basically just the evolution of the tribe.
Tourism is now a major source of revenue for the Maasai. But the Maasai don't often open their homesteads. Instead, they use elements of their traditions to create attractions for the tourists. Jean is at a recreation of an opul. It's a ceremony involving a feast of meat that is only for the men. A traditional opul will take place away from the village and last 2 or 3 days.
Today we got a message that we are coming, so we prepare our traditional food. Normally our traditional food is meat and milk and blood. We take a blood without killing from the neck of the cow.
In a lot of ways, the saving grace for wildlife in Tanzania is the fact that Maasai can live side by side with wild animals, and the reason is because it's just not in their tradition to kill wild animals for food, where most other tribes in Tanzania will do that. But all of these areas that's bounding Maasai village land is safe, where one can still go quality game viewing as well. Of course, Maasai are not killing the wild animals. So why is it that the Maasai has never went like other tribes where they would hunt wildlife?
That's a good question. You know, the Maasai people, we believe in God, for one God for everyone in the world. White people, black people. So our beliefs tell us that we have a very special gift coming from God as animals. We're herd people. We keep livestock, cows, goat, sheep.
So Maasai never eat wild animals?
We never eat any game meat.
Be nice with a bit of chili sauce. But the chief here say, not allowed. Only meat, no salt, no chili, just like that. It was actually pretty good. Tastes very goaty. These Maasai warriors, who are called Morani, are now starting to prepare soup that's made from boiled up goat intestines.
Normally the Maasai people, we never use the soup without the herbs. Then the herbs come from the different plants.
It's enjoying an early evening snack.
You guys, do you eat this? No?
Containing a lot of stomach lining and heart and lung.
Wildlife expert and safari guide Jean du Plessis has been getting up close to both chimpanzees and humans in his exploration of the changing face of hominid life on the Serengeti.
Humans lived here from as far back as 30 to 40,000 years.
Now he's up early to survey the landscape from above and to look back even further.
Hominids have been living on the Serengeti plain for millions of years. In fact,
Not too far from where I'm standing now are the famous footsteps of Laetoli, which date back 3 million years, and those are the earliest form or signs of humans walking on 2 legs. Since then, up until now, humans have utilized this great wildlife expanse.
From Australopithecus to Homo sapiens, they all share the common trait of walking on 2 legs. But it is the privilege of humans alone to survey this land from above, to understand its past, and hopefully to protect its future.
This morning we're taking to the sky in these hot air balloons to get a little bit of a new perspective of this beautiful countryside.
Okay, we are flying along the Serengeti Valley, and this valley collects water from open area and take that water to Ngorongoro River.
It's interesting seeing this area from the air, wondering how much has changed over the last 3 million years since Homo erectus actually took his first steps. I actually expect that it looked a lot different here before the eruption of Ngorongoro, where this massive ash cloud fell over here, and that's what gives this area this great characteristic of these open plains. It's debatably hundreds of meters of thick ash that covered all these valleys.
I'm trying to follow the river.
Yeah, it's amazing up here.
Somewhere there?
Don't think we'll be doing canoeing in this river. Just flew over 2 male lions, beautiful, clearly the dominant pair of this area. Very undeterred by their balloons. These open plains are not really that conducive to the way humans want to live. Even though there's a huge amount of game in the wet season and the dry season, it's extremely barren and there's very little to eat for anything from hominids all the way through to predators. So I would think that the area was much more ideal for humans to live and evolve prior to the eruption of the Ngorongoro crater. These river systems are like lifelines.
The Serengeti is a remarkable feat of nature. It was born in a catastrophic eruption of the Ngorongoro volcano millions of years ago, creating lush plains that sustain an incredible range of wildlife. It's where our distant ancestors walked and evolved as part of a self-sustaining ecosystem, where every creature, from the smallest insect to the massive bull elephant, plays their unique part. It's the site of the world's greatest mass migration of land animals. It's a window into what the world looks like when it's in balance. How nature, humans, and wildlife can coexist and live in harmony as it was meant to be. This is the Serengeti.